All right. Welcome to another Table Read Tuesday. Today we have a last minute change of story, and this is Big Fish, as you can see here, written by John August, based on the novel by Daniel Wallace. And this is a great, exciting story with a lot of twists and turns, and we have a great cast. And we're going to go around and have everyone introduce themselves. I'm Jacob Patrick, into screenwriting, not really into acting, so please forgive me. And then we have a new cast member, first time, Deanne Mandel. Please introduce yourself. Tell them.
Okay, hi, I'm Deanne, and I am jumping in this for the first time. I've worked for many years in theater in France, UK, and in this country, but I've been out of that for about 20 years. And I'm just jumping back in. I do sound energy healing here in Encinitas, and I have a school.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Clint.
Hey everybody, it's Clint back for another edition. Big Fish. How cool is that, man? Another classic read. Again, I am into writing, acting, directing, and producing. Continuing to go down through that path, and it's just awesome to be here again. What an amazing way to sit down with the script, look at it, see how people have done it, look at different writing styles, techniques, and how to get the idea that's in your head out onto paper in a way that people want to read and want to pay you to do it. So I'm here. This is my university right here, and I'm glad that you're all coming to join. Thank you.
Yeah, and that one, that was great. Like, this one's written by John August, and I listened to the podcast script notes that he does with Craig Mazin for years, and it's fantastic. So if you're into screenwriting and you haven't heard that podcast, check it out. John August has also made other cool things for screenwriters called, there's a thing called Highland 2. He has a writer emergency pack. He's written a bunch of other scripts. Craig Mazin on that has written some of the Hangover movie and Chernobyl. And also John August wrote some actual novels and books as well. So check them out, give them some support. And next on our cast, we have Tony Flora.
Hello. Thank you again for bringing me in on this. I'm Tony Flora. I am doing the actions and descriptions again, and I'm scrolling through the script. I think I have a couple of other small roles. So yeah, looking forward to this one. Movie I haven't seen, so bear with me. Totally.
But you will see, especially after this, because it's great.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially
Thanks.
if you guys like creative and imaginative things. And I think Angelina pointed out like family and emotional as well. And it has everything. It's kind of like Princess Bride, where there's a little bit of everything. So in a very different way. But Vicky, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Vicki Dykes. I've been involved with live theater for over 40 years. Done a few other things too, a bit of film. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm doing 9 different characters, so you never know when I'm going to jump in, and I'm not familiar with this, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And I hope you all enjoy it.
Thank you. Yeah, as we mentioned, this was a last minute thing, so this will be a cold read for a lot of these people. So yeah, we're just having fun with it, doing our best. And we have Heather.
Hello, my name is Heather Lee Cameron. I shall be playing Josephine, little girl, and the crowd number 3. I'm excited. Awesome. I've never seen this movie either. So cold read. Good times.
All right. And Angelina.
Hello, I'm Angelina. This is one of my favorites, if not my favorite movie. It's been so long since I've seen it. I've neglected my favorite. So I'm really happy. I'm excited to be reading this today with everyone. And I can't believe how many of you haven't seen it. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, they'll get to read it. It's kind of cool always to either way you approach it. If you watch a movie first and then you read it to see the differences, see what's left out, see how they told the story, how it came across there, or again, like reading a book or reading a script, see the picture you get in your head and what you get from the script, and then later when you see it. So either way, it's a kind of, I think, cool experience.
Yes.
And
still going to be a cold read for me too. So
yeah, I think mostly for all of us. Yeah, we don't really read the full script before reading the script during this time. This is our chance to read along it and see what it's all about. So anyone watching this, we're reading it just as new as you are. So Don.
Hey, Don. I have seen the film. I liked it from what I remember. Been so long that it'll be nice to read it and see what I remember from reading it. So, but what I remember from the movie, I liked it. I just can't remember a lot of it.
Yeah.
It was like, what was it, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think 2003
yeah.
or something.
Yeah, something like that. So, but I'm excited to read again today. Reading will. It'll be fun.
It will. Just kidding. Sorry. All right. And with that, let's get this story swimming along. Tony, take it away.
Big Fish, written by John August, based on the novel by Daniel Wallace. Final production, you guys are too big here. Okay. Final production draft includes post-production dialogue and omitted scenes. Copyright 2003 Columbia Pictures. This is a Southern story full of lies and fabrications, but truer for their inclusion. Fade in. A river. We're underwater watching a fat catfish swim along. This is the beast.
Jacob, unmute yourself.
There are some fish that cannot be caught. It's not that they're faster or stronger than other fish. They're just touched by something extra. Call it luck, call it grace. One such fish was the beast.
The beast's journey takes it past a dangling fish hook, baited with worms, past a tempting lure sparkling in the sun, past a swiping bear claw. The beast isn't worried.
By the time I was born, he was already a legend. He'd taken more $100 lures than any fish in Alabama. Some said the fish was the ghost of Henry Walls, a thief who drowned in the river 60 years before. Others claimed he was a lesser dinosaur left over from the Cretaceous period.
Interior Will's bedroom, night 1973. Will Bloom, age 3, listens wide-eyed at as his father, Edward Bloom, 40s and handsome, tells the story. In every gesture, Edward is bigger than life, describing each detail with absolute conviction.
I didn't put any stock into such speculation or superstition. All I knew was I'd been trying to catch that fish since I was a boy no bigger than you. And on that day you were born, that was the day I finally caught him.
Exterior campfire, night 1977. A few years later, and Will sits with the other Indian guides as Edward continues telling the story to the tribe.
Now, I tried everything on it. Worms, lures, peanut butter and cheese. But on that day, I had a revelation. If that fish was the ghost of a thief, the usual bait wasn't going to work. I would have to use something truly desired.
Edward points to his wedding band, glinting in the firelight. Your finger? Edward slips his ring off.
Gold.
While the other boys are rapt with attention, Will looks bored. He's heard this story before.
I tied my ring to the strongest line they made, strong enough to hold up a bridge, they said, if just for a few minutes, and I cast upriver.
Interior Bloom Front Hall, night 1987. Edward is chatting up with Will's pretty date to the homecoming dance. She is enjoying the story, but also the force of Edward's charisma. He's hypnotizing.
The beast jumped up and grabbed it before The ring even hit the water, and just as fast, he snapped it clean through the line.
Will, now 17 with braces, is fuming and ready to leave. His mother, Sandra, from whom he gets his good looks and particularity, stands with him at the door.
You can see my predicament. My wedding ring, the symbol of fidelity to my wife, soon to be the mother of my child, was lost in the gut of an uncatchable fish.
On Will and Sandra.
Make him stop.
His mother pats him sympathetically, then adjusts his tie. What did you do?
I followed that fish upriver and downriver for 3 days and 3 nights until I finally boxed him in.
Will regards his father with exasperated contempt.
With these 2 hands, I reached in and I snatched that fish out of the river. I looked him straight in the eye and I made a remarkable discovery.
Interior, tiny Paris restaurant, La Rue, 14 degrees, night, 1998. Will, now 28, sits with his gorgeous bride, Josephine. This is their wedding reception, crowded with their friends and family. They should be joyful, but Will is furious. Edward has the floor, ostensibly for a toast. The room is cozy and drunk.
This fish, the beast, the whole time we were calling it to him, when in fact it was a her. It was fat with eggs and was going to lay them any day.
Over near the doorway, we spot Sandra, just returned from the restrooms. She looks gorgeous. She couldn't be any happier if this were her own wedding.
Now, I was in a situation. I could gut that fish and get my ring back, but doing so, I would be killing the smartest catfish in the Ashton River, soon to be the mother of hundreds of others.
Will can't take it anymore. Josephine tries to hold him back, but he gets up and leaves. Edward doesn't even notice.
Did I want to deprive my soon-to-be-born son the chance to catch a fish like this of his own? This ladyfish and I, well, we had the same destiny.
As he leaves, Will mutters in perfect unison with his father.
We were part of the same equation.
Will reaches the door where his mother intercepts him.
Honey, it's still your night.
Will can't articulate his anger. He just leaves.
Now, you may well ask, since this lady fish wasn't the ghost of a thief, why did it strike so quick on gold when nothing else would attract it? That was the lesson I learned that day, the day my son was born.
He focuses his words on Sandra. The story is, and has always been, about her more than anyone.
Sometimes, the only way to catch an uncatchable woman is to offer her a wedding ring.
A laugh from the crowd. Edward motions for Sandra to get up here with him. As she crosses, we can see that 30 years of marriage has not lessened their affection for each other. As they kiss, Edward tweaks her chin a special little way. The crowd applauds. Edward toasts the happy couple. Josephine covers well for her absent husband, a smile as warm as summer. Edward downs his champagne in a gulp. Exterior, outside La Rue, 14 degrees, night. We come into the middle of an argument on the sidewalk. Occasional passerby takes notice, especially as it gets more heated. Both men are a little drunk.
What? A father's not allowed to talk about his son?
I'm a footnote in that story. I'm the context for your great adventure, which never happened. Incidentally, you were selling novelty products in Wichita the day I was born.
Jesus Christ.
Friend of yours? Did you help him out of a bind?
Come on, Will. Everyone likes that story.
No, Dad, they don't. I do not like the story. Not anymore. Not after 1,000 times. I know all the punchlines, Dad. I can tell them as well as you can. For one night in your entire life, the universe does not revolve around Edward Bloom. It revolves around me and my wife. How can you not understand that?
A long beat, then.
Sorry to embarrass you.
Will won't let him get the last word.
You're embarrassing yourself, Dad. You just don't see it.
Ankle on Edward. Fine. A hand to wave. Enough of you. He walks away. Angle on Will, still fuming with righteous anger. It's then we freeze frame.
After that night, I didn't speak to my father again for 3 years.
Interior AP newsroom, Paris, day. A typically busy day. On hold with the phone cradled under her ear, Will sorts through a bundle of mail dropped on his desk.
William Bloom with the Associated Press. If I could just...
He's put back on hold. Returning to the mail, he finds a hand-addressed envelope, rips it open.
We communicated indirectly, I guess, in her letters and Christmas cards. My mother would write for both of them.
Interior Bloomhouse day, kitchen. At the table, Sandra talks on the phone while Edward fixes a sandwich.
When I'd call, Mom would say that Dad was out driving or swimming in the pool.
Edward takes a seat, starting to eat his sandwich.
True to form, we never talked about our not talking.
Interior Bloomhouse master bedroom, night. Sandra stands by the window, watching as exterior Bloom backyard, night, continuous. Edward swims laps in the family pool. He's born to the water.
The truth is, I didn't see anything of myself in my father, and I don't think he saw anything of himself in me. We were like strangers who knew each other very well.
Exterior river, day. Edward stares intently into the water, a lion in wait.
In telling the story of my father's life, it's impossible to separate the fact from the fiction, the man from the myth. The best I can do is to tell it the way he told me.
We look down at the river, where Edward's reflection is caught in the dark water. As the water ripples past, something changes. Sure enough, as we look up again, it's a younger Edward Bloom, 20s, staring into the water. He's not just handsome, not just charming. It's as if all the forces of natural world have conspired to create him.
It doesn't always make sense, and most of it never happened.
Suddenly, this Edward thrusts both hands into the water, grabbing hold of the beast. He brings the catfish up to his face, looks it right in the eye. A beat, then the beast spits out Edward's gold ring.
But that's what kind of story this is.
Smiling, Edward takes the ring, then throws the beast back into the water with a splash. Title over, Big Fish. Interior hospital room day. Young Dr. Bennett stands between the wife's legs. She's flustered and sweating, but the doctor has a comforting bedside manner.
Now, Mrs. Bloom, I'll need you to give me one good push on 3. 1.
Suddenly, we hear a pop as a slimy mass of human being rockets into the doctor's unprepared hands. Bennett tries to hold tight, but the infant is slippery like a fish. It shoots up into the air. The nurses and the husband try to grab the baby, but no one can hold it. As the newborn sails upward toward the camera, we can see a giggling smile on its face. As it falls, the newborn knocks over a tray, which provides it a ramp to slide right out of the room. Everyone races after it. Interior hospital hallway day. Bursting through the doors.
Grab that baby.
A nurse finally scoops the slippery baby. Everyone lets out a collective sigh of relief.
My father's birth would set the pace for his unlikely life. No longer than most men's, but larger. And as strange as his story got, the endings were always the most surprising of all.
Interior half-dark Paris apartment, present day. Over the sound of rain, a phone rings on a chair. By the tone of the ring, we know it's not in the US. It has that insistent European sound. As it keeps ringing, we look to see the apartment is mostly empty, just a few half-unpacked boxes. A cradle is still in its carton. Keys in the lock. Laughter in the hallway. The door swings open to reveal a drenched Will, 29, carrying 4 stacks of groceries, the bottoms collapsing from the rain. His wife, Josephine, 28, pushes past him to get the phone.
Hello, oui?
Will begins stripping out of his wet clothes, each layer unleashing a new drizzle. He plays it up, trying to get a reaction out of Josephine.
Yes, he's here.
She hands the phone to Will, concerned.
It's your mother.
Half stripped, Will takes the phone. This won't be good news.
Hi. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
As Josephine takes off her raincoat, we see that she is very, very pregnant. She listens carefully to Will's side of the conversation, trying to gauge how bad the news is.
What does Dr. Bennett say? Okay. No, sure. Let me talk to him. I'll wait.
He covers the mouthpiece, looks over to Josephine.
He's bad.
It's more than they thought. They're going to stop chemo.
You need to go.
Probably tonight.
A beat.
I'm going with you.
You don't have to.
I'm going with you.
Interior Air France 747 night. As the plane continues boarding, a stewardess recites the welcome spiel in French. Will has a window seat in coach. Josephine sits behind him, putting on hand lotion. Taking his hands, she rubs excess onto him. There's an effortless intimacy between them. She can pinpoint what he's feeling before he can. Interior 747 flying night. Hours later, and the lights are dimmed. Most of the passengers are asleep, including Josephine. Her head is propped against Will's shoulder, her hands tucked under her belly. Will watches her sleep, brushing back her hair. A beat, then he notices a bored boy in the next row over. Off the glow of the reading light, the boy is using his hands to cast shadows on the seat back. The kid is pretty good, making a convincing bird, a passable monkey, and finally a dog. We push in on the silhouettes.
So which one's it gonna be? The monkey in the barn? The dog in the road?
Focusing on the shadow, we match cut to interior Bloomhouse night. Come to find Edward making the shapes. Will, 6, sits in his pajamas on the floor next to him. The end table lamp lies between them, its shade off to cast big shadows on the wall.
What about the witch?
Your mom says I can't tell you that one anymore. You get nightmares.
I'm not scared.
Edward looks for a beat, seeing if his wife is in earshot. Then he leads in, complicious.
Neither was I, at first.
Will smiles, excited to hear the forbidden story.
This all happened in the swamp outside of Ashton. Kids weren't supposed to go out into the swamp on account of the snakes and spiders and quicksand that would swallow you up before you could even scream. But there were 5 of us out there that night. Me, Ruthie, Wilbur Freely, and the Price brothers, Don and Zachy.
Edward holds up his hand, counting the names on his fingers.
Not one of us knew what was in store.
His hand moves past the light. We come to a flashlight sweeps past. We are exterior field house at the swamp edge, night. The night is whirring and breathing, alive. The moon hangs low, casting long shadows. 5 kids walk past in silhouette. 4 have flashlights on. The 5th keeps tripping, crashing into young Edward.
Zachy, turn on your flashlight.
I don't got any batteries.
Red-headed Zachy Price is 10. His brother Don Price is 12, and a lot bigger than the others.
And why'd you bring it?
I don't want to be in the swamp with the witch, no flashlight.
Wilbur Freely, also 10, is the black asthmatic son of a sharecropper. Red-headed Ruthie Macklin, 8, is happy just to be there.
Is it true? She got a glass eye?
I heard she got it from gypsies.
What's a gypsy?
Your mama's a gypsy.
Your mama's a bit.
You shouldn't swear. There's ladies present.
Shit.
Damn.
Screw.
Turn off your flashlights. She'll see them.
Moving up behind the kids, we find ourselves at the gates of exterior, a creepy old house, night.
Now it's common knowledge that in most towns of a certain size have a witch, if only to eat misbehaving children and the occasional puppy who wanders into her yard. Witches use those bones to cast spells and curses that make the land infertile.
We pull back and back, revealing more of gothically creepy house. Its broken windows, strangling vines, and eerie gargoyles half buried in the dirt. Even bats are afraid to fly over it. In the moonlight, the house is especially sinister. Who knows what is lurking in the shadows?
Yet, of all of the witches in Alabama, there was one who was the most feared, for she had one glass eye. which was said to contain mystical powers.
We finally come to the kids, starting in through the gate.
I hear if you look right at it, you can see how you're gonna die.
That's bullshit. She's not even a real witch.
You're so sure. Why don't you go in there and get that eye? I heard she keeps it in the box on her night table.
Edward looks back at the spooky house.
Are you too scared?
I'll go in there right now and get that eye.
Then do it.
Fine, I will.
Fine, do it.
Fine, I'm doing it.
He hands Zachy his flashlight, then starts climbing the gate. Edward, don't!
She'll make soap out of you. That's what she does. She makes soap out of people.
Edward drops down on the far side of the gate. Truth be told, Edward is scared, but he forges ahead anyway. Wilbur looks to Ruthie, and they're in complete agreement. They get the hell out of there. Zachy would run too, but Don holds him by the collar. Exterior approaching the house. Edward curves around the tall bushes that hide the front door. Anything could jump out of them. He steps on the porch. The boards squeal and creak, but he continues on. A cat screams out from a broken wicker rocker. Catching his breath, Edward reaches the front door. The doorknob is ancient brass, 2 projections that look like horns. Yet Edward extends his hand, reaching closer and closer before he finally rings the doorbell. Impossibly fast, the door opens, revealing an old woman with a patch over her left eye. She looks like she's been dead for years, but too stubborn to lie down.
Ma'am, my name is Edward Bloom, and there's some folks like to see your eye.
Exterior back at the gate, night. Zachy and Don Price wait for Edward, each moment more convinced he's already dead. But suddenly, he's back at the gate.
You get that eye?
I brought it.
Let's see it.
The old woman steps out of the shadows behind Edward, flipping up her eye patch. When their flashlight beam hits her left eye, it shines with a hellish glow. We rush in on Zachy, who is paralyzed by what he sees. Exterior front porch day. An old man, Zachy, stands on a wobbly stepladder changing a light bulb. Suddenly, the ladder gives way, and he falls. Dead. Exterior at the gate, night. We rush in on Don Price. Interior fraternity house bathroom day. 20-year-old Don Price falls face forward on the tile, face mushed into the grout. Very much dead. Exterior at the gate, night. Don and Zachy both tremble with fear. The latter has tears in his eyes.
I saw how I was going to die. I was old and I fell.
I wasn't old at all.
The brothers suddenly bolt. Still standing next to the old woman, Edward smiles. Exterior at the old woman's door, night. Edward helps her back inside. He could leave now, but his curiosity gets the better of him.
I was thinking about death and all, about seeing how you're gonna die.
The old woman turns to him slightly, still not facing him.
I mean, on one hand, if dying was all you thought about, it could kind of screw you up. But it could kind of help you, couldn't it? Because everything else you can survive.
The old woman smiles a little, a crooked grin of broken teeth.
I guess I'm saying, I'd like to know.
The old woman turns, leaning her face right in front of his. And on a silent count of 1, 2, 3, Edward looks into the eye. This time we don't cut. Instead, we hold on Edward as he witnesses his death. He stares transfixed, perplexed, and amused. Whatever he sees, it's not as dire as the other boys. His future has something strange in store.
Huh. That's how I go.
The old woman nods. Still a little overwhelmed, Edward turns and leaves.
From that moment on, I no longer feared death, and for that, I was as good as immortal.
As Edward leaves, the door swings shut on him, on its own. Interior, exterior, Bloom house, present day. The front door opens to reveal Will and Josephine on the porch with their bags. Reversed to Will's mother, Sandra, 53, surprised and a little annoyed.
How did you get here?
I swam the Atlantic. It's not that big, really.
Ruth McKibben offered to pick you up at the airport.
We rented a car.
You didn't need to do that. You just didn't.
A beat. Starting over.
Hi, Mom.
He leans in and hugs her. She shudders, squeezing her son tight. Will and his mother are cut from the same cloth, strong-willed but practical. They've always been close.
I'm so glad you're here.
That hug finished, Sandra pushes past her son to her daughter-in-law. Seeing the size of her belly,
You shouldn't have flown, but
they hug.
It's good to see you. You look beautiful.
It's not flattery, it's the truth.
thank you. I'll bet you need to
Yes.
down the hall to the right. The door sticks. You have to really pull it.
Josephine squeezes past, a smile to her husband. Be nice. Will heads back to the rental car to retrieve luggage. Sandra follows him. Coming down the driveway, we get to see the house for the first time. An older suburban home, 3 bedrooms, big for the neighborhood, and nicely grown into the lot. Kids are playing on the street.
Is that Dr. Bennett's car?
He's up with your father.
Heading back to the house,
How is he?
He's impossible. He won't eat. And because he won't eat, he gets weaker. And because he's weaker, he doesn't want to eat.
How much time does he have left?
We don't talk about those things. Not yet.
interior kitchen day. Sandra is pouring iced tea for Will and Josephine. Dr. Julius Bennett, 85, enters from the foyer, still winded from coming down the stairs. He was the town's first Black physician. He's still the town's best physician.
Will.
Dr. Bennett, it's good to see you. My wife, Josephine.
A pleasure.
He judges her belly.
You're 7 months?
Tuesday day.
He leans close to her, whispering in her ear.
It's a boy.
She smiles, surprised but not doubting. Will looks over. What did he say? Josephine shakes her head. Back to the main subject.
You don't think he looks any worse?
No, I would say he's the same.
And in the silence that follows, a lot is said. It wasn't the upbeat reply Sandra was hoping for.
Can I see him?
Absolutely. Be good for you to talk to him.
A moment of awkwardness. Everyone here knows they haven't spoken in years. Sandra hands Will a squat can of Ensure from the case on the counter.
Get him to drink one of these. He won't, but tell him he has to.
Interior foyer day. Coming out of the kitchen, Will slowly climbs the stairs. They creak with every step. The wall is filled with family photos, happier times. Most of the pictures are of Will, starting when he was an infant and ending at his wedding. As he climbs the stairs, we can see him growing up with every step. Interior upstairs hallway day. A crack of sunlight spills around the half-open door at the end of the hallway. Will walks toward it, running a hand along the wallpaper. Almost at the door, he stops for a beat, gets his breath, then goes inside. Interior guest room day. Edward Bloom, 61, lies asleep on the bed. Although he's not the vibrant man we've seen before, it's not as bad as we feared. The illness has been quick and left him largely intact. There are no IVs, no monitors, nothing. Coming up to the bed.
Dad?
Edward cracks open an eye, a beat before he focuses. He tries to say something, but no words come out. He looks over at a pitcher on the nightstand. Will pours him a glass of water, helping him hold it to his parched lips. Finished, Edward sets down the glass by himself. A very long, tense beat. Will almost speaks again to fill the silence. Finally.
You are in for a surprise.
Am I?
Having a kid changes everything. I mean, there's the diapers and the burping and the midnight feedings.
Did you do any of that?
No, but I hear it's terrible. Then you spend years trying to corrupt and mislead this child, fill its head with nonsense, And still, it turns out perfectly fine.
You think I'm up for it?
You learn from the best.
Will doesn't rise to the challenge. A beat, then he remembers the can of Ensure. Holds it up. Edward recoils.
Just drink half the can. I'll tell her you drank the whole thing. Everyone wins.
A beat, then Edward rolls his eyes. Fine. Will cracks open the can, finding a straw on the nightstand.
People needn't worry so much. It's not my time yet. This isn't how I go.
Really?
Truly, I saw it in the eye.
The old lady by the swamp?
She was a witch.
No, she was an old and probably senile, maybe schizophrenic.
I saw my death in that eye, and this is not how it happens.
So how does it happen?
Surprise ending. Wouldn't want to ruin it for you.
Edward slurps down as much of the Ensure as he can stand, then pushes the can away. He swallows with difficulty.
There was this panhandler who used to come stop me every morning when I come out of this coffee shop near the office.
Okay.
And every day I gave him a quarter. Every day. Then I got sick and was out for a couple of weeks. And when I went back there, you know what he said?
What did he say?
You owe me $3.50.
Really?
True story.
A beat.
When did you ever work in an office?
There's a lot about me you don't know.
You're right.
Edward gives a wry smile. He walked into that.
Your mother was worried we wouldn't talk again. And look at us. We're both talking fine. We're storytellers, both of us. I speak mine, you write yours down. Same thing.
Will won't commit to Edward's assessment.
Dad, I'm hoping we can talk about some things while I'm here.
You mean while I'm here?
I'd just like to know the true versions of things, events, stories, you.
Edward laughs a little, which becomes a cough. The hacking escalates until another drink of water gets it under control. It's not clear whether any of this was an act to keep from talking.
Your mother hasn't been keeping up the pool. If you wanted to, you could.
I will.
You know where the chemicals are?
I used to do it when you were gone, remember? I used to do it a lot.
He didn't mean for that to sound so pointed. Taking the half-empty Ensure, Will gets up to go. He's at the door when...
I was never much for being at home, Will. It's too confining. And this here, being stuck in bed, dying is the worst thing that ever happened to me.
He smiles at his joke.
I thought you weren't dying.
I said, this isn't how I go. The last part is much more unusual. Trust me on that.
Interior, upstairs hallway, day. Shutting the door behind himself, Will drinks the rest of the Ensure himself. Edward was right. It tastes horrible. Heading for the stairs, Will walks past an open door. As he leaves the frame, we stay behind to look inside. Interior, Will's bedroom, day. Flashback. Where an 8-year-old Will is propped up in bed, his face covered with chicken pox and pink calamine lotion. He's showing Edward how many bumps there are on his arm.
Dr. Bennett says I'm going to have to be home for a week.
That's nothing. I once had to stay in bed for 3 years.
Did you have chicken pox?
I wish.
Interior, tiny church, day. Wearing a white shirt and tie, young Edward, still about 10, sings Down to the River, My Lord, along with the congregation. His voice is high and thin, but he gives it his all. Suddenly, his voice cracks and drops a half octave, and then another. His friends Wilbur Freely and Ruthie look over, wondering what's wrong. Embarrassed, Edward just keeps singing, trying to follow along with the baritone part. He pulls at his collar. Then he pulls again, his face getting red. Starting to panic, he loosens his tie. He's starting to undo the collar button when it pops off by itself. 2 more buttons fly off. One hits a chubby woman in the neck. On his shoes, as we watch Edward's pant cuffs rise inch by inch. That's how fast he's growing.
Truth is, no one quite knew what was wrong. Most times a person grows gradually. I found myself in a hurry.
Interior, Edward's bedroom day. Young Edward lies in bed, his limbs connected to various pulleys and levers to support his weight. He has a dozen encyclopedias around him and another dozen on the floor.
My muscles couldn't keep up with my bones, and my bones couldn't keep up with my body's ambition. So I spent the better part of 3 years confined to my bed, with the World Book Encyclopedia being my only means of exploration. I had made it all the way to the G's, hoping to find an answer for my gigantificationism, when I uncovered an article about the common goldfish.
Insert the encyclopedia article, complete with drawings.
Kept in a small bowl, the goldfish will remain small. With more space, the fish can grow to double, triple, or even quadruple its size.
Young Edward thinks this through.
It occurred to me then that perhaps the only reason for my growth that I was intended for larger things. After all, a giant man can't have an ordinary-sized life.
Exterior, baseball field day. The crack of a bat announces the game-winning home run. The crowd cheers the swing, and especially the batter, as he rounds the bases. Although we've seen him briefly before, this is our first real exposure to grown-up Edward, who will follow from roughly the ages of 18 to 30.
As soon as my bones had settled in their adult configuration, I set upon my plan to make a bigger place for myself in Ashton.
Exterior, school's field day. Single shots. Football hero Edward leads his team to victory. On the sidelines, a pretty girl admits the name of her secret love.
Edward Bloom!
The other girls squeal in agreement. Don Price looks over, glowers. Exterior, neighborhood day. Single shot, a lawnmower roars along the grass. We look up to see who's pushing it, but it's not Edward. It's one of his teenage employees. Edward is back at the truck, which is painted to read Bloom Landscaping. He has workers on every lawn. He signs an autograph for an admiring Cub Scout. Interior, basketball court day. Edward takes an impossible shot at the buzzer from the other end of the court. Naturally, he makes it, winning the game. As the crowd goes wild for Edward, Don Price is the only teammate who doesn't mob him. Exterior, town day. Edward carries a dog out of a burning house. Interior, science fair day. Edward wins a blue ribbon for his invention, a machine labeled Perpetual Motion. He and the judge pose for a photograph, a flash. Pissed, Don Price throws his crappy lima bean plants in the trash. Interior, high school stage day. A dashingly handsome Edward leads the cast out for a curtain call. He's the star of the show. Off to the side, we see Don Price is the ass end of a horse costume. Edward soaks in his applause, smiling and gracious. Exterior, graduation stage day. Edward accepts his diploma. The principal hugs him tight.
I was the biggest thing Ashton had ever seen until one day a stranger arrived.
Exterior, farm day. As two farmers shake their heads, we reverse to show a massive hole punched through the side of a barn. It's roughly the shape of a man, but no human could be that large. Exterior, sheep pen day. Two fat ewes look up, a shadow falling across them. They bleat in panic as two oversized hands reach in and scoop them up. Their protests continue as they're carried away, one under each arm. We still haven't seen the full stranger. Exterior, courthouse day. A mob of about 50 have gathered, many of them with shotguns. Amid the crowd, we see Don Price.
He ate an entire cornfield.
He ate my dog.
If it ain't gonna stop him there, we will. I wouldn't have mob violence in this town. Now, has someone tried talking to him? You can't reason with him?
Oh,
Shepherd, is that me too?
he's a monster.
Agreement from the crowd. And then
I'll do it.
everyone turns to see who said that. The crowd parts to reveal none other than Edward Bloom. Don Price glowers.
I'll talk to him, see if I can get him to move on.
Son, that creature could cut you without trying.
Trust me, You'll have to try.
Exterior hill outside Ashton, day. Edward climbs up the last bit of the steep hillside, reaching the mouth of a cave. Outside, buzzards squabble over the remains of the giant's feast. Broken barrels, bones picked clean. In his most serious voice, Edward calls out,
Hello,
There's no answer.
my name is Edward Bloom. I want to talk to you.
From deep in a cave, a thunderous voice.
Go away.
The giant's voice has such force that it blows Edward's hair back.
I'm not going anywhere until you show yourself.
A beat, then we hear a rumble, like a train coming. Edward braces himself, fists ready for a fight, if that's what it's going to take. As the rumble gets louder, the ground starts to shake. Even Edward starts to worry. Just how big is this guy?
Armed with the foreknowledge of my own death, I knew the giant couldn't kill me. All the same, I preferred to keep my bones unbroken.
Edward picks up a stone ready to play David to Goliath. Then suddenly, the giant bursts forth. Hunched over, he slams into a stunned Edward, knocking him halfway down the hill. Carl the giant is bigger than any man you've ever seen. Not just tall, but massive. He's completely feral, with a beard to his elbow and skin scratched and blistered. What remains of his clothes are ragged and muddy. God knows what's living in that matted hair. Carl leans over Edward, blocking the sun. Edward throws his rock, but it just bounces off. The giant didn't even notice it.
Why are you here?
Edward ponders the best response, settling on,
So you can eat me. The town decided to send a human sacrifice, and I volunteered.
Carl's eyes narrow, confused. Edward stands up.
My arms are a little stringy, but there's some good eating on my legs. I mean, I'd be tempted to eat them myself. So I guess just if you could get it over with quick, because I'm not much for pain, really.
Edward closes his eyes, hands at his side, ready to be eaten. Carl just stares at him, not sure what to do. After a beat, Edward opens his eyes a tiny bit just to see what the giant is doing. Relieved to see he's not licking his chops.
Look, I can't go back. I'm a human sacrifice. If I go back, everyone will think I'm a coward, and I'd rather be dinner than a coward. Here,
Carl sits down with a boom, dejected.
start with my hand. It'll be an appetizer.
Reaching up, Edward shoves his hand into Carl's mouth, but the giant spits it back out.
I don't want to eat you. I don't want to eat anybody. It's just, I get so hungry. I'm too big.
And that's the sad truth. Carl is less a monster than a freak, a giant man, but in the end, just a man. Edward takes a seat beside him.
Did you ever think, maybe you're not too big? Maybe this town is just too small? I mean, look at it.
Circling behind them, we look down at Ashton, a tiny town in a tiny valley.
Hardly 2 stories in the whole place. Now I've heard in real cities, they've got buildings so tall you can't even see the tops of them. Really? Wouldn't lie to you. And they've got all-you-can-eat buffets. You can eat a lot, can't you? I can. So why are you wasting time in a small town? You're a big man. You should be in a big city.
Carl smiles, but then it fades. A certain sad suspicion.
You're just trying to get me to leave, aren't you? That's why they sent you here. What's your name, Giant? Carl. Mine's Edward, and truthfully, I do want you to leave, Carl, but I want to leave with you. You think this town's too small for you? Well, it's too small for a man of my ambition, and I can't see staying here a day longer. You don't like it? I love every square inch of it, but I can feel the edges closing in on me. A man's life can only grow to a certain size in a place like this. So what do you say? Join me?
Carl thinks for a moment. Then,
Okay. Okay.
they shake on it.
Now first, we got to get you ready for the city.
Exterior river day. In a single shot, Carl cuts his hair with hedge clippers while Edward cuts up a surplus army tent to make him a shirt. Exterior main street of Ashton day. Spirits buoyed by the high school marching band, all the good citizens of Ashton are gathered to see off Edward and Carl. There's a few tears amid the familiar faces.
Edward Boom, the first son of Ashton. It's with a heavy heart we see you go. But take with you this key to the city, and know that at any time, if you want to come back, all our doors are open to you.
Edward ducks a bit so the mayor can put the key around his neck. The crowd cheers. And with that, Edward and Carl start walking, waving as they go. Only Don Price, smoking on the corner, isn't sad to see Edward go. He crushes his cigarette under his heel. He wishes he could crush Edward. Many of the townfolk come onto the street to hug Edward or shake his hand.
That afternoon, I left Ashton. Everyone seemed to have advice.
Find yourself a nice girl. Don't trust anyone in Kentucky. Watch your pride, Edward Bloom.
But there was one person whose counsel I held above all others.
As the crowd parts, he finds himself face to face with the old woman. The ruckus slows and quiets, as if a strange spell has been cast. She motions for Edward to lean down so she can whisper something to him. Although we're very close, we can't hear her voice.
She said that the biggest fish in the river gets that way by never being caught.
The advice only succeeds in confusing Edward.
Okay, thanks.
Edward and Carl keep walking. The old woman shuffles off, somehow knowing her advice will go unheeded.
What did she say? Beats me.
Exterior road day. We tilt up from the road to reveal Edward and Carl walking off to out of Ashton. Each wears a backpack with all his earthly possessions.
There were two roads out of Ashton, a new one which was paved and an older one that wasn't. People didn't use the old road anymore, and it had developed a reputation of being haunted.
Edward and Carl come to a bend where the paved road veers left and an overgrown dirt road runs straight. The old road is blocked with signs and warnings of danger.
Since I had no intention of ever returning to Ashton, this seems as good of time as any to find out what lay down that road.
Carl looks at the dirt road, wary.
You know anyone who's taken it? That poet, Norther Winslow, did. He was going to Paris, France. He must have liked it because no one ever heard from him again. Tell you what, you take the other way and I'll cut through here and meet you on the far side.
A little paranoid.
You're not trying to run away. Just to be sure, you can take my pack.
Carl perks up, even though it means more for him to carry. Exterior dirt road day. The road is still overgrown, but not altogether creepy. The sun is still shining and the birds still chirping. Spinning the key to the city, Edward whistles because it's a day meant for whistling. Exterior further along, rough path. The road has narrowed to a rough path. Spikes of sunlight break through the thick canopy, catching particles in the air. Still, Edward whistles. Coming around a bend, his pitch drops as he sees thick, thorny vines growing across the path. He stops. For the first time, he realizes the birds have stopped singing. The forest is dead quiet. He looks back the way he came. It's tempting to go back. It would be easier to go back. But Edward presses on. He carefully steps through the thorns. His trouser legs catch on the barbs. We can hear the fabric tear. Further along, a scratched and sweaty Edward waves off various stinging bugs flying at him, finally whipping off his hat to swat at them. Just then, a cawing crow swoops down and grabs the hat right out of his hands.
You stupid son of a...
He stops his swearing, but grabs a rock and throws it. The stone ricochets off a tree and into a bee's nest. The swarm roars out. Edward hightails it, each step still precarious. Exterior, the dark forest day. Later, Edward is bruised, battered, and bee-stung. A half-broken sign lies in the road. Edward picks it up, reads it. Warning, jumping spiders. Sure enough, up ahead he sees the path is overgrown with thick cobwebs heavy from the rain.
There comes a point where a reasonable man will swallow his pride and admit he's made a terrible mistake. The truth is, I was never a reasonable man.
Edward tosses the sign and forges ahead into the spiderwebs.
And what I recalled of Sunday school was that the more difficult something became, the more rewarding it was in the end.
Exterior clearing, the road, day. Edward emerges from the forest, brushing the last cobwebs off and shaking the spiders from his shirt. One is stuck in his sleeve, and he has to dance to get it out. Even then, he still keeps twitching, convinced another one is left behind. At his feet, the gravel road has returned, smooth and dusty and comforting. Ahead lies a tiny one-street town, smaller even than Ashton, with power lines emerging from the woods to feed it. Dangling from the line above, he sees 24 pairs of shoes, their laces tied together. He passes a sign that reads, "Welcome to Spectre." Exterior, the town of Spectre, day. It's a main street with stores on each side. Cole's Pharmacy, Talbot's, Five and Dime, Al's Country Store. Everything is old, but this isn't a ghost town. In fact, there's a group of about 20 citizens spilling out to see Edward approach. Most are smiling. There are even a few tears of joy. What's more, all of these people are barefoot.
Friend.
A 40-year-old man named Beeman comes out of the seed store to greet Edward. Friendly, but a little drunk, he's the closest thing to the town has to a mayor. He's carrying a clipboard.
Welcome to you. What's your name?
Edward Bloom.
Beeman checks the clipboard. Not finding the name, he flips forward a few pages, still looking.
Bloom like the flower?
Yes.
Oh, here, right here. Edward Bloom. We weren't expecting you yet.
Still confused.
You were expecting me?
Not yet.
A helpful woman named Mildred chimes in.
You must have taken a shortcut.
I did. It nearly killed me.
Mm-hmm. Life will do that to you. And truthfully, well, it's a lot easier, but it's longer.
Much longer.
And well, you're here now, and that's what matters.
Beeman's daughter, Jenny, 8, hides behind her father, peering around to look at the handsome stranger.
What is this place?
Oh, this is the town specter. Keep a secret, best kept secret in Alabama. Say here you're from Ashton, right? Last person who came from Ashton was Northern Winslow.
The poet. Whatever happened to him?
Oh, he's still here. Let me buy you a drink. I'll tell you about him. Well, hell, I'll have him tell you.
No, I gotta meet someone. I'm already running late.
He didn't mean it as a joke, but for some reason, everyone's laughing.
Son, all right, I'll tell you. You're early.
Interior, Beeman's house, day. Sitting at the kitchen table, Edward takes a second slice of apple pie. He and Beeman are joined by Northern Winslow, 30, who fancies himself a cultured artist, though he's never left the state.
Now tell me if that ain't the best pie you ever ate.
It truly is.
Under the table, young Jenny is stealthily untying the laces on Edward's shoes.
Everything here tastes better. Even the water is sweet. Nothing gets too hot, too cold, or too humid. The night didn't wind to go through the trees, and you'd swear the whole symphony's out there, just playing just for you.
Suddenly, Jenny yanks off Edward's shoes. She races for the door.
Hey!
He chases after her. Exterior town, Main Street, day. As she runs, Jenny ties Edward's laces together. Reaching the edge of town, she tosses the shoes up and around the power line. A perfect throw. There's no way he's ever getting them down. The gathered citizens of Spectre cheer for Edward, who is still confused and overwhelmed. The women hug him. Men shake his hand. Still focused on his shoes.
Wait, I need those shoes.
There's no softer ground than this town.
That rhymes.
He's poet laureate.
The townsfolk continue to congratulate Edward.
Sometimes in a dream, you'll visit places that seem instantly familiar, filled with friends you've never met.
Exterior, under a tree, dusk. Edward sits with Northern Winslow. The fireflies are out, thousands of them.
A man might travel his entire life and never find a place so inviting. My journey had scarcely began, and I had arrived.
Norther hands him his notebook.
I've been working on this poem for 12 years.
Really?
There's a lot of expectations. I don't want to disappoint my fans.
A beat.
It's only 3 lines long.
Norther grabs his notebook back.
That's why you don't show people your work in progress.
Norther, do you ever regret not making it to Paris?
I can't imagine any better place than here.
You're a poet. You ought to be able to. And maybe if you'd seen more, you could.
Norther doesn't answer, just goes back to his notebook. Exterior by the river, night. By the light of the full moon, Edward soaks his feet in the water, trying to make sense of it all. The key to the city dangles around his neck. He stares at himself in the reflection. He smiles. It's then that a woman emerges the far side of the river. No telling where she came from. She must have been swimming underwater. We never see her face. She stands in the river with her bare back to Edward, squeezing the water out of her golden hair, oblivious to his presence. Edward is breathless. It's the first woman he's seen in her natural state, and he doesn't dare move lest he frighten her away. Then he sees the snake. It's a cottonmouth, has to be. It leaves a break in the water. It's a small reptilian head aiming for her flesh. There's no decision to be made. On pure instinct, Edward dives in. He swims as hard as he can, grabbing the snake just as it's about to strike. The woman dives back underwater, understandably terrified that a man is coming at her.
No, it's okay. I got it. I got the snake.
As the splashing subsides, Edward looks at what he holds in his hands, which isn't a snake at all, but rather a common stick, and a non-threatening one at that. While Edward ponders his mistake, he looks around to discover that the girl in the river is gone. He never even saw her face.
Wait, I'm sorry. Hello?
Edward keeps expecting her to surface somewhere, but she never does. He stands alone in the river, wondering what tricks his eyes are playing on him. Exterior by the river, night, continuous.
There's leeches in there.
Edward looks to the bank where young Johnny Hill is watching him.
Did you see that woman?
What did she look like?
Well, she,
Oh, was she naked?
Embarrassed to admit it,
yeah.
Well, it's not a woman, it's a fish. No one ever catches her.
given the day he's had so far, Edward isn't inclined to follow up on the issue. He starts to wade back to the bank.
Fish looks different to different people. My daddy said it looked like the coon dog he had when he was a kid, back from the dead.
Edward climbs up onto the shore completely drenched. He pulls up his pant legs to reveal 3 shiny leeches clinging to his skin.
Shoot.
He starts to work pulling them off. Exterior path to town, night. Edward and Jenny walk back.
How old are you?
18.
I'm 8. That means when I'm 18, you'll be 28. And when I'm 28, you'll only be 38.
You're pretty good at arithmetic.
And when I'm 38, you'll be 48. And that's not much difference at all.
Eager to get off this subject.
Sure is a lot now, though, huh?
Exterior Main Street, night. As Edward and Jenny approach the main street, they find downtown has been transformed. Lanterns and streamers hang on cables across the street, and a small stage has been built at one end to hold fiddlers. The whole town is there in celebration of its newest citizen, Edward Bloom. Before he can protest, 2 women have grabbed him by the arms, pulling him in to dance with them. The resulting dance number seems both choreographed and complete chaos. From farmer to baker's wife, everyone wants to dance with Edward, who finds himself tossed around like a stick caught in a whirlpool. Still, he's having a blast. Jenny grabs both his hands and they spin wildly. Beeman plucks his laughing daughter away to dance with her. Then Mildred cuts in to dance with Edward. It's hard to hear over the music.
Jenny thinks you're quite a catch. We all do.
What?
I said, you're quite a catch.
Edward stops dancing a beat, then he heads for the edge of the crowd. Beeman is there with Jenny on his shoulders.
I have to leave. Tonight.
Why?
This town is everything a man could ask for, and if I were to end up here, I'd consider myself lucky. But the fact is, I'm not ready to end up anywhere.
Well, no one's ever left.
How are you going to make it without your shoes?
I suspect it will hurt a lot.
And with that, Edward walks down Main Street. The townspeople stop dancing, disbelieving, some shaking their heads. Poor Edward Bloom's gone crazy.
Well, you won't find any better place.
I don't expect to.
Jenny runs to him. She'd tackle him if she could.
Promise me you'll come back?
I promise. Someday, when I'm really supposed to.
It's not good enough, but it'll have to do. Edward keeps on walking. Exterior, the dark forest night. Various shots. Edward negotiates the thorns in his bare feet. It's horrible. Almost unendurable. And then it gets worse. The trees ahead are moving. At first, it just seems to be the wind blowing the branches, but as we hear the wood cracking and groaning, there's no mistaking it. They're trying to block him. Snake-like white roots shoot out of the ground, grabbing for his ankles. He leaps up, kicking off one tree trunk to grab another one's branches. He swings off, lands, and rolls. Now all the trees are moving to block him, their dark shapes towering over him in the flashes of lightning.
As difficult as it was to reach the spectra, I was fated to get there eventually. After all, no man can avoid reaching the end of his life.
As he ducks under branches, the chain holding the key to the city gets caught. He's almost strangled, but the chain finally breaks. The silver key disappears into the mud. Scrambling forward, he looks for a way out. But the trees have encircled him, their spiky crowns bending down to crush him. He screams up at the night until his breath is gone.
And then I realized this wasn't the end of my life.
With a sudden calm,
this isn't how I die.
Another lightning flash, and suddenly the trees are back where they've always been. Edward is lying shoeless and torn in a muddy puddle, staring up at the rain and laughing. Exterior, the road day. His bare foot steps onto asphalt.
Friend.
Edward turns to see Carl to his right, coming down the larger paved road.
What happened to your shoes?
Edward looks down at his muddy, bloody feet.
They got ahead of me.
With that, the men start walking down the larger road. Crossfade to interior dining room night. Edward and Will sit at opposite ends of the table, with Sandra and Josephine in the middle. Although Edward has a small plate of food in front of him, he hasn't touched it. He's exhausted from the trip downstairs, but determined to maintain the family dinner ritual. The other three eat awkwardly, each clink and scrape of fork and knife resonating. Will finally breaks the silence.
I don't know if you've seen it, but Josephine has some photos in the most recent Newsweek.
Really? That's wonderful.
I spent a week in Morocco for the story. It was incredible.
We'll have to pick up a copy.
A beat. As Will scoops out another serving of potatoes, Edward suddenly speaks.
I don't know if you're aware of this, Josephine, but African parrots in their native home of the Congo, they speak only French.
All three stop to listen.
Really?
You're lucky to get 4 words out of them in English. But if you were to walk through that jungle, you'd hear them speaking the most elaborate French. Those parrots talk about everything, politics, movies, fashion, everything but religion.
Taking the bait.
Why not religion, Dad?
It's rude to talk about religion. You never know who you're going to offend.
A beat.
Josephine actually went to the Congo last year.
Oh, so you know.
Interior grocery store night. Will shakes his shopping cart free from the pile-up while his mother checks her list. At the produce section, Sandra starts to bag string beans.
Mom, would you say you understand, Dad?
Of course.
what I mean is, do you really know what's going on in his head?
Yes.
How is that possible? I mean, you try to ask him a question and suddenly it's another one of his stories. You can't honestly say you know him.
Yes, Will, I do. And don't presume things you don't know.
She's more amused than annoyed, but Will is entering dangerous territory.
Would you say you understand, Josephine?
Yes, but that's a different.
No, it's not. It's exactly the same. Your father and I met, we dated, and we married. We chose each other because we understood each other on some fundamental level, just the same as you two.
She moves on to the carrots.
Josephine and I have a lot in common.
Yes, you both think William Bloom is a very smart man. The problem is, you only see me as your mother and not as someone's wife. And I've been his wife a lot longer than I've been your mother. You can't discount that.
True, but I've known him my whole life, and I don't feel like I know him at all, or ever will.
With a look, Sandra acknowledges the stakes.
I know it's not easy. Just remember, he didn't choose to be your father, and you didn't choose to be his son. You just ended up together. You could pick numbers out of a dark bag, and it'd be just the same. If you ask me, it's a wonder parents and children can stand each other at all.
But I understand you, Mom. I always have.
Well, clearly you don't. But I'm not the mystery you're trying to solve right now.
Interior at the checkout night. Reaching the cashier, Sandra hands over her coupons. Will is approaching with a Newsweek magazine. 2 check stands over. An attractive blonde woman in her 50s is getting her change. Though she's Sandra's generation, she carries herself like a much younger woman with blue jeans and sneakers. She accidentally makes eye contact with Will as he passes. We hold on the woman, who tracks Will as he reaches Sandra. It's hard to read her reaction. Does she recognize him or just find him attractive? Will notices the gaze. The woman turns away. Will racks his brain. Does he know this woman?
Before I forget, your father has papers in the basement I'd like you to go through. I wouldn't know what's important.
Mom, do you know who that is? Blonde hair?
Sandra looks. After a beat, the blonde woman turns again semi-casually. Noticing that both Will and Sandra are looking, she smiles a little before taking her cart to leave.
Was she one of your teachers?
No, but it's weird. She seemed to recognize me.
Do you know who that is?
The cashier turns to look. He can only get a profile as the woman leaves.
Never seen her before. Pretty, though.
Interior guest bedroom night. A portable fan quietly whirs in the corner. Turned low, the radio on the nightstand is playing a call-in AM sports show. Just a wash of background chatter. Edward lies asleep on his back. At the window, Josephine quietly lowers the shade. She reaches over Edward to switch off the radio. He stirs from the silence. He wasn't fully asleep, and sees Josephine stretched over him.
Hello.
She smiles.
Hi, how are you feeling?
I was dreaming.
What were you dreaming about?
He tries to recollect, but it's already gone. Josephine motions. Is it okay for her to sit on the bed? He nods.
I don't usually remember. Useless. They're especially portentous. You know what that word means? Portentous?
She shakes her head.
Means when you dream about something that's going to happen. Like one night I had a dream where this crow came and told me, "Your aunt is going to die." I was so scared, I woke up my parents. They told me it was just a dream, to go back to bed. But the next morning, my Aunt Stacy was dead.
That's terrible.
Terrible for her. But think about me, a young boy with that kind of power. Was it 3 weeks later that crow came back to me in a dream and said, "Your grandpa is going to die"? Well, I ran right back to my parents. My father said, "No, Gramps is fine." But I could see there was trepidation. And true enough, the next morning, Grandpa was dead.
He sits up in bed, his strength returning.
For the next couple of weeks, I didn't have another dream until one night the crow came back and said, "Your daddy is going to die." Well, I didn't know what to do, but I finally told my father, and he said not to worry, but I could tell he was rattled. That next day, he wasn't himself, always looking around, waiting for something to drop on his head. Because the crow didn't tell how it was going to happen, just those words, "Your daddy is going to die." Well, he went into town early and was gone for a long time, and when he finally came back, he looked terrible, like he was waiting for the axe to fall all day. He said to my mother, "Good God, I just had the worst day of my life." "You think you've had a bad day," she said. "This morning the milkman dropped dead on the porch."
Josephine smiles, a half laugh, which gets him smiling too. A long beat. Then deadpan.
Because, you see, my mother was banging the milkman.
No, I understand.
He was sleeping with her a little extra cream.
She nods, a bit more of a laugh.
He was filling her basket. He was making deliveries around back.
As Edward continues, she can't help but laugh harder, especially as the metaphors get more vulgar.
He was buttering her rolls, pumping her churn, splashing milk in her box.
Stop.
They were squeezing the cheese, cleaning the bottles, licking the popsicle.
She's starting to cry from laughing.
Cracking the eggs and making an omelet.
With that, he stops. She regains her composure.
Spooning the sherbet.
Can I take your picture?
You don't need to take a picture. Just look up handsome in the dictionary.
Please?
He rolls his eyes. Why not? Josephine leaves, heading down the hall to get her camera. We stay with Edward in bed.
I have photos from the wedding to show you. There's a great one of you and my father. I had an extra print made.
Edward grimaces, a flash of pain. Around others, he's hiding how much it hurts. But alone, we can see how bad it is. He controls his breathing, trying to push through it.
I want to see pictures of you and your wedding. I've never seen any.
She returns with her camera. Edward smiles, doing a good job of masking the pain.
That's because we didn't have any. A wedding. Your mother-in-law was never supposed to marry me. She was engaged to somebody else.
I never knew.
I never told you that? Probably just as well. He would have told it. Oh, Will never told you that. He would have told you it the wrong way anyway. All the facts and none of the flavor.
Oh, so this is a tall tale?
Well, it's not a short one.
A devilish smile. Pushing past Edward, we settle on the whirling fan. Match cut to a spinning pinwheel, held by a little boy. He's slumped over his father's shoulder, being carried toward a big top tent. We are exterior Olympia Circus night, where the second-rate carnival is parked for the moment in the Alabama field. To the left, we spot Edward, 20-ish, halfway through a bag of peanuts. He's still carrying the backpack we saw earlier and scratched up from his trip through Spectre.
I had just left Ashton and was on my way to discover my destiny. Not knowing what that would be exactly, I explored every opportunity that presented itself.
Joining the crowd, he heads to the Big Top, interior Big Top night. A troupe of stilt-walking fire breathers finishes their act to tremendous applause. As the performers clear away, the circus owner and ringmaster Amos Calloway, 50, approaches the stands. He may be only 4 feet tall, but Amos has a titanic presence.
Ladies and gentlemen, you think you've seen the unusual. You think you've seen the bizarre. But have you traveled the 5 corners of the world? And let me tell you, I've never seen anything like this.
From behind Amos, carnies start rolling on a massive ball toward the crowd.
When I found this man, I was picking the oranges in Florida. His fellow workers called him El Penumbre, the shadow. Because when you look at him, besides, he blocks out the daylight. He could take a whole tree in his hands and shake the fruit. I pay his crew boss $10,000 just so I could take him with me.
Amos comes up to a middle-aged woman in the first row, a quieter moment.
Not to alarm you, man. But if this man wanted to, he could crush your head between his toes. But he wouldn't. He's not going to hurt you, folks, because he's our gentle giant. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Colossus!
The carnies back away from the ball as a deep drum roll begins. A moment, then the ball starts to bulge from inside. A foot suddenly busts out from within, gasps from the crowd. That foot is massive. In the stands, Edward looks closer, intrigued. As the drumbeat intensifies, a second foot breaks out, followed by hands, shoulders, finally the head. This is Colossus. From a very low angle, we look up to see just how massive he is. He seems to fill the heavens. With his shaved head and giant club, he seems more ogre than man. In the bandstands, a young boy's jaw drops in awe. Colossus walks down the row, letting the crowd get a better look at him. Some reach out to touch him, disbelieving. A tight spotlight follows him, revealing faces in the crowd. Colossus passes Edward, who seems unimpressed. He leans with the spotlight, whistling to get the big man's attention. He points to the edge of the stands where he finds his friend is sitting on the dirt. Carl the giant stands up, so big the spotlight has to widen just to hold him. He's a good foot taller than Colossus. There's a gasp from the crowd, along with nervous anticipation. What will happen next? Angle on Amos, stunned, megaphone dangling. Angle on Colossus, realizing the gig is up. With a resigned shrug, he rests his club on his shoulder and walks away into the shadows. Cut to interior big top night later. As the stand's empty, Edward and Carl talk to Amos.
What's his name? Does he talk? It's not important.
Carl.
Tell me, Carl, have you heard the term involuntary servitude?
Carl shakes his head.
Unconscionable contract?
Nope.
Great. That's fantastic.
It was on that night that Carl met his destiny, and I met mine. Almost.
Interior big top night, continuous. As Amos pulls Carl aside to give him the hard sell, Edward notices a beautiful young woman, 16, leaving with her family. She's wearing a blue dress and hat. For no good reason, she looks back at Edward. The two make eye contact. As they do, all motion freezes. A fiery baton remains mid-twirl, flames locked in place. A spilled box of popcorn hangs mid-air, each kernel like a snowflake. Even the elephant is mid-poop. Only Edward is free to move, winding his way between the frozen bodies, ducking underneath arms to get closer and closer to this woman.
They say when you meet the love of your life, time stops. And that's true. What they don't tell you is that once time starts up again, it moves extra fast to catch up.
Suddenly, everything rushes. The crowd becomes a blur, and the young woman is lost in its wake. Now it's Edward who's frozen, helpless in time. Exterior dirt parking lot night. Edward checks in windows as cars pull out, searching for his faded love. Not finding her, he becomes more frantic, running down the rows. Crossfade to the empty lot. Colossus is thumbing for a ride. The last pickup truck stops and lets him climb in back. As the truck pulls out, it passes a dejected Edward. He'll never find that girl, the love of his life. Interior big top night. Amos leans over so Carl can sign a contract on his back. He spots Edward walking back into the tent.
Hey, kid, your friend just made himself a star.
That's great.
Amos hands off the contract to a clown.
My attorney, Mr. Soggybottom.
Good to meet you.
Mr. Soggybottom honks his horn, then waddles off.
Why, what's the matter with you, kid? I haven't seen a customer so depressed since the elephant sat on the farmer's wife. Get it? Depressed?
Carl chuckles.
See? The big guy likes it.
I just saw the woman I'm going to marry. I know it. But then I lost her.
Oh, tough break. Most men have to get married before they lose their wives.
I'm going to spend the rest of my life looking for her. That, or I'll die alone.
Jesus, kid. Well, let me guess. Really pretty. Blonde hair. Blue hat?
Yes.
Oh, I know her uncle. Friends of the family.
Who is she? Where does she live?
Kid, don't waste your time. She's way out of your league.
As Amos starts to walk away, Edward hurries to catch up with him. Carl follows as well.
What do you mean? You don't even know me.
Sure I do. You're the hot back in Hicksville. But you're in the real world. You got squat. You don't even have a plan. You don't have a job. You have nothing but the clothes on your back.
I've got a whole backpack full of clothes.
He points to the bleachers, where no backpack is to be found.
Someone stole my backpack.
Kid, you're a big fish in a small pond. This here is the ocean, and you're drowning. Take my advice, go back to Puddleville. You'll be happier there.
Getting in front of Amos, Edward stops him.
Wait. You said I don't have a plan. I do. I'm going to find that girl and marry her and spend the rest of my life with her.
Amos smiles, amused.
I don't have a job, but I would have a job if you gave me one. And I don't have much, but I would have more determination than any man you've ever going to meet.
Huh. Sorry, kid. I don't do charity.
I'll work night and day, and you won't even have to pay me. You just have to tell me who she is.
Amos takes a long look at him. Ultimately, there's no way he can say no. He shrugs. What the hell?
All right. Every month you work for me. I tell you one thing about her. That's my final offer.
Edward shakes Amos's hand before he can retract the offer. We move into a montage. Interior big top center ring night. Clothes on Edward smiling nervously. His head tilted to the side. As we pull back, we see why. He's holding it in a massive lion's open mouth. The beast's sharp teeth are just poking his skin. If the lion so much as flinches, Edward is dead. The crowd applauds, which makes the lion antsy, which makes Edward antsier.
From that moment on, I did everything Mr. Calloway asked, and a lot of things he didn't. I'd go 3 days without stopping to eat, and 4 days without sleeping.
Exterior, the Hydra, day. His eyes droopy from lack of sleep, Edward mans the whirling amusement park ride.
The only thing that kept me going was the promise of meeting the girl who would be my wife.
Nodding off, Edward falls backwards into the path of the spinning arms. One of the Hydra cars hits him square in the gut, throwing him up and away, sailing 200 feet through the air. Exterior, field, day. Edward chases a costumed pig, tripping over tent cords, falling in the mud. His hunt leads him through the back of a tent, where he's unwittingly stepped in front of a line of motorized birds. To the left, customers are shooting with rifles. He dodges 4 shots that knock down the birds around him. He catches his breath, lucky. Then a half-blind old woman pulls her trigger, hitting him in the shoulder. Exterior, behind a tent, day. Carl the giant bandages Edward's arm as well as he can. Amos is walking past.
Mr. Calloway, it's been a month today.
Amos stops, looks at the young man. Finally,
This girl, the love of your life, her favorite flower is daffodils.
he walks away. We push in on Edward, enraptured by the concept.
Daffodils. Daffodils.
Interior, stables, day. Edward shovels shit in the nastiest stables you've ever seen. But all he can think about is
Daffodils.
the wonder of it. He goes back to shoveling, a smile on his face.
True to his word, every month Amos would tell me something new about the woman of my dreams.
Interior, a dark place night. Close on Edward, lost in a quiet reverie, pondering his latest bit of information.
College. She's going to college.
A sudden explosion as Edward is shot. Interior big top night. Out of a giant cannon. Interior stables night. Under a full moon, Edward feeds the animals.
Music. She likes music. I like music too. Over the months, I learned a lot about the woman I was going to marry, but not her name and not where to find her. That time had come. I couldn't wait any longer.
Exterior, Amos Calloway's trailer night. Under a full moon, Edward walks up to the battered camper and is about to knock when he notices it's rocking. A lot. Not just that, there's a moaning coming from inside. But Edward knocks anyway.
Mr. Calloway, it's Edward Bloom. Need to talk to you.
Suddenly, the rocking and moaning stop. A beat, then the door handle begins to rattle. It seems to be stuck. Edward turns the knob. Suddenly, the door bursts open. Edward is knocked down by a massive black dog, the biggest you've ever seen. It has green glowing eyes and a lick of fire for tongue. Edward wrestles with the beast, its mouth snapping at his throat. Blocking with an arm, Edward tries to push himself free, but the creature's hands, it has hands instead of paws, hold on tight. Entwined, they roll across the dirt. The other nearby carnies scatter for cover. Mr. Soggy Bottom pulls a revolver out of his clown suit, loads a silver bullet. Edward finally succeeds in throwing the beast off. He rolls to his feet. The hellhound squares back on its haunches, growling, ready for another leap. Mr. Soggy Bottom sheds a clown tear, aiming the revolver at the dog. At the last moment...
No, wait!
Edward moves just as Mr. Soggy Bottom fires. The bullet catches Edward in the shoulder, knocking him down. The carnies gasp. Licking its chops, the dog approaches the helpless Edward, who feels the ground around him, looking for some kind of weapon. He finds only a small stick. He waves it at the dog, ready to strike it. Like magic, the dog's whole demeanor changes. It bounces excitedly, ready to play fetch. Seeing an opportunity, Edward throws the stick as far as he can. The dog bounds after it, smashing down 3 cars. It returns a beat later with the flaming stick, which it drops at Edward's feet. Its tail whips back and forth.
It was that night I discovered that most things you consider evil or wicked are simply lonely and lacking in social niceties.
Edward throws the stick again. The dog takes off in a new direction. Transition to exterior field pre-dawn. Exhausted from playing fetch all night, Edward throws the stick into the woods. The still spry dog goes after it. It's gone for a long time, long enough that Edward becomes concerned. He follows it into the woods. Interior woods dawn. Amos Calloway stands up behind a bush, buck naked and hairy. He still has the stick in his mouth, which he takes out as Edward approaches.
Didn't kill anything, did I?
A few rabbits, but I think one of them was dead already.
That would explain the indigestion.
Edward tosses him his jacket to cover his privates.
I was wrong about you, kid. I may not have much, or you may not have much, but what you've got a lot of. You could get any girl.
There's only one I want.
A beat.
Her name is Sandra Templeton. She's going to Auburn. The semester's almost over, so you better hurry.
Thank you.
Good luck, kid.
Edward walks away, then starts running. He has to get there as soon as possible. Amos sits down and scratches his ear with his foot. Exterior big top day. Edward shakes Carl's giant hand. They hug.
After saying my goodbyes, I hopped 3 trains to get to Auburn that afternoon.
Exterior Auburn University day. We descend on the main quad to find Edward Bloom dunking his head in the fountain. He changes out of his grubby shirt into a new one, just out of the package. It's the mid-1960s, but by the conservative dress of the passing students, it could be any era. Exterior sorority house day. Edward stands with a bouquet of daffodils in the front of a half-open door. Through the crack, we can see the edge of a young woman talking in hushed tones with another girl we can't see. Finally, a decision is reached. The door opens to reveal the woman of Edward's dreams, Sandra K. Templeton. She's effortlessly beautiful, pure and simple as sunlight. He can't believe he's finally reached her. He half laughs, nervous. That makes her laugh, not sure what's going on.
You don't know me, but my name is Edward Bloom, and I'm in love with you. I spent the last 3 years working to find out who you are, and I've been shot and stabbed and trampled a few times, had my ribs broken twice, but it's all worth it to see you here now and to finally get to talk to you, because I am destined to marry you. Knew that from the first moment I saw you at the circus, and I know it now more than ever.
On Sandra, overwhelmed. All she can finally think of to say is,
I'm sorry.
Don't need to apologize to me. I mean, I'm the luckiest person you're going to find today.
She puts her hand on the doorframe. On her left ring finger, we see a diamond.
No, I'm sorry. I'm engaged to be married.
On Edward, as his heart falls 20 floors, he tries to suppress the reaction and put on a brave front.
Oh.
But you're wrong. I do know you, at least by reputation. Edward Bloom from Ashton. See, I'm actually engaged to a boy from Ashton, Don Price. He was a few years older than you.
Exterior, creepy old house, the gate, night. Young Don Price shines his flashlight on Edward. Various high school athletic competitions, recapping earlier football, baseball, and basketball highlights, we find Edward beats Don every time. The street corner Ashton Parade. A smoking Don Price crushes his cigarette as Edward leaves town. Back to exterior, interior, sorority house, the doorway. Edward is dumbstruck with all the strength he can muster.
Well, congratulations. I'm sorry to have bothered you.
He turns and walks down the front steps. She stays in the doorway for a few beats, feeling genuinely horrible for what's happened. But eventually she goes back inside. We hear giggles from inside as her sorority sisters get to the bottom of this.
Stop it. It's not funny. That poor boy.
We lead Edward as he walks away, tears just starting to form.
Fate has a cruel way of circling around you. After all this work to leave Ashton, the girl I loved was now engaged to one of its biggest jerks.
He exits frame, leaving only the sorority house in the background.
There's a time when a man needs to fight, and there's a time when he needs to accept that his destiny is lost, that the ship has sailed, and that only a fool would continue.
A beat. Edward steps back into the frame, looking at the sorority house.
The truth is, I've always been a fool.
We circle as he shouts,
Sandra Templeton, I love you, and I'm going to marry you.
Interior sorority house foyer day. Sandra and her sisters peer through the curtains. Is this guy crazy? Interior lecture hall day. The Tweedy economics professor continues his explanation. Sandra isn't paying a lot of attention. He switches on the overhead projector without looking at it. There's a titter from the students, but he doesn't notice. A classmate nudges Sandra, who looks up. Written on the projector is, I love Sandra Templeton. She's horrified and excited at the same time. The professor finally notices what's written there. Exterior quad, day. Walking with her book, Sandra shakes her head, disbelieving. We look up to the blue sky, where a giant sky-written heart floats in the wind. Interior Sandra's bedroom the next morning. At her sister's prompting, a just-woken Sandra looks out the window, the second-story window, to find the lawn filled with 10,000 daffodils. Edward stands amid the sea of flowers. He's waited there 6 hours. Exterior sorority house day. Sandra walks out to him. She's smiling, confused, joyful, and scared. All down Greek Street, students are coming out to see the display.
Daffodils?
They're your favorite flower.
How did you get so many?
I called everywhere in 5 states and explained that this is the only way I could get my wife to marry me.
Out of nowhere, a tear drops down Sandra's cheek. She wipes it off.
You don't even know me.
I have the rest of my life to find out.
From down the street.
Sandra!
It's Don. Promise me you won't hurt him.
If that's what you want, I swear it.
The adult Don Price arrives. He's 230 pounds of football-playing, Skinner-loving, fraternity-proud muscle. and he's pissed. A gang of his brothers walk behind him.
Bloom!
Don?
What the hell are you doing? This is my girl. Mine.
I didn't know she belonged to anybody.
Don Price decks him, knocking him down. Edward gets right back up, but makes no move to defend himself. Unfazed, Don slugs him again.
Stop it!
What's the matter, Bloom? Too scared to fight back?
I promised I wouldn't.
A beat. Don shrugs. Fine. Then proceeds to kick Edward's ass 9 ways to Sunday.
Well, I took the beating of a lifetime. It was Don Price who was ultimately defeated.
The ass whooping continues. We intercut with interior fraternity house bathroom day. Flash forward. Sitting on the can, Don Price pinches a loaf while reading a new Playboy.
All the physical activity has worsened a congenital valve defect. Put simply, his heart wasn't strong enough.
Don Price squeezes down hard, trying to shit the unshittable. Suddenly, he grasps his chest and collapses face first onto the tile. Match cut to exterior witch's house gate, night, flashback. The same image of Don's dead face on the tile is reflected in the eye. Returning back to exterior, the sorority house day. The thrashing continues. Edward somehow fights his way back to his feet, ready to be knocked down again.
Don!
Don is about to slug Edward again when he turns. Sandra pulls off her engagement ring. There's an audible "ah" from her sisters and an "oh" from Don's brothers.
I will never marry you.
A beat. Don stands, stunned, his mind reeling. Edward, whose eyes are swollen almost shut, keeps waiting for the next punch. Where is it? What's going on?
What? You love this guy?
He's almost a stranger, and I prefer him to you.
She hands him the ring. Another beat, then Don storms off. But not before decking Edward one last time. Sandra leans over Edward's broken body. His head lies on the daffodils.
How can I convince you to stop?
Go out with me.
He smiles, his teeth bloody.
Okay.
As the crowd of students applauds and cheers, we crane up above the flowered battlefield.
As it turns out, Sandra was able to keep her same date at the chapel. Only the groom had changed.
As the music reaches a crescendo, we suddenly cut to interior guest room night, present.
I thought you said you didn't have a church wedding.
Well, we were all set to, but there was a complication.
He reaches for his glass of water, but Josephine already has it for him. She watches him while he slowly drinks the entire glass, thirstier than he imagined. While he's drinking, we cut to interior upstairs hallway night, continuous. Will, back from the grocery store, reaches the top of the stairs. He hears voices coming from the bedroom.
Is it the medicine that's making you thirsty?
Truth is, I've been thirsty my whole life. Never really known why.
Will quietly approaches the door, not exactly sneaking, but not exactly announcing his presence. The door is open a few inches, letting him look in on his father and his wife. Intercut hallway, bedroom.
There was one time when I was 11.
You were talking about your wedding.
I didn't forget. I was just working on a tangent. See, most men, they'll tell your story straight through, and it won't be complicated, but it won't be interesting either.
I like your stories.
And I like you.
He doesn't let the moment linger with undue sentimentality. There's a story to be told.
Now, the thing about working for a circus is you don't have a regular address, and after 3 years, I had a lot of undelivered mail.
In the hallway, Will shifts to a new position, letting himself listen to the story one more time.
During the 4 weeks I was in the hospital, the postmaster caught up with me.
Interior hospital day. Bruised and bandaged, Edward sorts through a big bag of mail with help from Sandra. He rips open an official-looking letter. Reading it, his face drops. Flute and drum music rising to a military cadence.
It turned out that while my heart belonged to Sandra, the rest of my body belonged to the U.S. government.
Interior Army airplane night. With a buzz cut and paratrooper gear, Edward squats with a dozen other soldiers. The noise of the engines is deafening, but Edward is engrossed in an Asian phrase book.
A hitch in the army was up to 3 years at that point, and having waited 3 years just to meet my Sandra, I knew I couldn't survive being away from her that long. So I took every hazardous assignment I could find, with the hope of getting my time to less than a year.
The jump
Go.
leader yells.
Go! Go!
One by one, the men jump out, their chutes clipped to a main line. When his time comes, Edward leaps, but he's stuck. His cord is caught up in the assembly. He twists and struggles, trying to free himself. Looking down, he can see the white parachutes disappearing into the darkness. They're already long gone. Digging a knife out of his pocket, Edward gets to work cutting through the cable. It finally pops. Edward jumps from the plane. Exterior outside stage night. 1,000 Chinese soldiers sit, bored, watching the equivalent of a USO show. A Chinese ventriloquist is on stage with his communist puppet. We have no idea what they're saying to each other, but every act is fundamentally the same. The MC comes on to usher him off the stage before he's finished. The ventriloquist protests, but finally gives in. The MC makes a shoot him in the neck motion to one of the armed guards off stage. Exterior, high above the stage night. We look down with Edward, who is drifting right for the stage. He can't steer. He's helpless. But then a blast of fireworks from the sides of the stage. The lights go out as a drum roll begins. It's just enough cover for Edward to remain unseen. He lands with a clang on the lighting catwalk above the stage. He barely grabs on, disconnecting his chute just as the curtain goes up. Edward looks out at the sea of excited soldiers. Every one of them would kill him. He's the legless cricket left on the anthill. Exterior on stage. The curtain rises to reveal Ping, 27, at a microphone. She's as gorgeous a woman as you'll ever see. She stands with her lips turned in profile. Her body is a knockout, dress cut to reveal skin. The soldiers are on their feet, whistling and hollering. Up on the catwalk, Edward is surprised by an enemy soldier. The two men begin to scuffle. Music starts, a vampy torch song. Ping sings melody while an offstage voice carries perfect harmony.
Sometimes a girl can feel oh so alone without a lover to call her own. Sometimes it's so bad she wants to explode, wants to grab the first man she sees and tear off his clothes.
A roar from the soldiers. She knows what they want. Still fighting, Edward jumps for a pole on the far side of the catwalk, sliding down it to end up backstage. His determined opponent follows him down.
But she won't. Oh no, she can't. She needs a special, different, unusual man. Because that girl who looks like me, she has wants, oh, but she has needs. Any of you got needs?
The soldiers roar louder, stomping on the bleachers. Backstage, the two men are still fighting.
I've had twice the adventure, cried double the tears, 2 times the bad times in half the years. I need a strong man because I've got twice the love to give.
For the first time, Ping turns, and now we see why she was standing in profile. Ping is one half of Siamese twins. Her identical twin is Jing, who's been singing harmony all this time. They are 2 separate women who join at the waist, one set of perfect legs beneath them. Edward sees the twins from behind, does a double take. It costs him a punch to the jaw.
Say hello to Jing. Hello, Jing. I'm Ping. She's Jing. She's the good one. I'm the bad one.
As the music builds toward the climax, Edward finishes the fight, knocking the guard out with a right hook. As Ping and Jing reach the last chorus, they strike a final pose in the shape of a heart their arms forming the arches, their backs forming the curves. Edward slips behind the curtains, trying to get away. The soldiers are shouting for an encore, lights wavering. The curtain slowly lowers, revealing Edward's parachute. The applause dies, replaced by a concerned rumble. The MC yells for the guards to search. On stage, Ping has no idea what's happening. Jing reaches into her cleavage to pull out her eyeglasses. Interior dressing room night. As armed guards search the halls below stage, Ping and Jing shut the door to their dressing room. At the closet, they start to change outfits. Off stage, their personalities become quite apparent. Ping is brash, bitchy, and ambitious, while Jing is quiet, sweet, and bookish. In Chinese, subtitled.
How could you miss your cue? You made me look like a fool out there, alone. You weren't alone.
Ping huffs, turning her back on her sister. Jing reaches deeper into the closet to find a new dress, exposing Edward's hiding place. She gasps. Ping turns to look.
Who the hell are you?
I'm not going to hurt you.
Damn right you're not. Guard!
Jing grabs her, a hand over her mouth, but it's too late. A rifle-toting guard looks in, pretending to be her bitching sister.
Tell your men not to bother us and lock that door.
The guard obeys. Ping shakes her sister off, desperately flipping through his Asian phrases book. He finds,
Please, I need your help.
What makes you think we'll help you?
Edward pulls a photo out of his flak jacket. It's Sandra. Crossfade to various shots.
Over the next hour, I described my love for Sandra K. Templeton and the ordeal that brought me before them, as it always had been. This love of myself was my salvation. It was destined to be.
Hearing the story, Jing wipes away a tear. Even Ping is a little affected.
We put together an elaborate plan for escape involving a whaling ship to Russia, a barge to Cuba, and a small, dirty canoe to Miami. We all knew it would be dangerous.
Still subtitled.
And what are we supposed to do when we get to America?
I can get you bookings. I know the biggest man in show business.
Bob Hope?
Bigger.
Transition to exterior Templeton family house, day. Sandra checks the mail, hoping for a letter from Edward.
And so the twins and I began our arduous journey halfway around the world. Unfortunately, there was no way to send a message back to America.
A black car pulls up. 2 Army officers get out.
And it was no surprise that the Army believed I was dead.
Hearing the news, Sandra cries out. The pain of her shout makes church bells ring. Exterior behind the Templeton house, day. Sandra hangs sheets to dry on the clothesline, forming a tunnel of fabric.
After 4 months, Sandra had gotten over the worst of the nightmares. When the phone rang, she didn't think it was somehow me calling her. When a car drove past, she didn't get up to check out the window.
Pulling a dress out of a basket, Sandra looks up to see a man's silhouette on the street sheet in front of her. She freezes, watching the shadow ripple across the white fabric, blowing so softly in the breeze. She knows it can't be him. He's dead. She turns away. With all the strength she can gather, she hangs up that dress and digs out another one of the basket. Looking up, she sees not a shadow, but Edward himself standing before her. She gasps, disbelieving, but his hand is real. It is destiny. Without another moment's hesitation, she kisses him. Crossfade to bright sunlight filters through the soft sheets. We're under the covers where a man's hand traces the curves of a woman's bare back. A beat, then she turns over in bed, revealing her to be Josephine. She blinks slowly, just waking up. Will is watching her. He's been up for a while. We are actually interior Will and Josephine's room, day, where the couple stays cocooned under the sheets, a kind of limbo. A kiss good morning, legs entangling. Neither wants to get up.
I talked with your father last night.
Did you?
A look to say, should I be worried?
You never told me how your parents met.
They met at Auburn.
What about the details? How they fell in love, the circus, the war. You never told me any of that.
That's because most of it never happened.
But it's romantic.
A beat.
Hmm.
What?
What? I know better than to argue romance with a French woman.
He moves his head out from under the sheet. She follows him to the outside.
Do you love your father?
Everyone loves my father. He's a very likable guy.
Do you love him?
Will doesn't want to answer yes or no.
You have to understand, when I was growing up, he was gone more than he was here. And I started thinking, maybe he has a second life somewhere else, with another house, another family. He leaves us, he goes to them. Or maybe there is no family. Maybe he never wanted a family. But whatever it is, maybe he likes that second life better. And the reason he tells all those stories is because he can't stand this boring place.
But it's not true.
What is true? I've never heard my father say a single true thing.
Off her silence.
Look, I know why you like him. I know why everyone likes him. But I need you to tell me I'm not crazy.
You're not.
I need you on my side.
I am always on your side, and I think you should talk to him.
Interior guest room day. The family finishes eating breakfast off TV trays set up around the bed. For his part, Edward is looking better. Certainly not recovered, but there's an optimism to his expression. And for the first time, he's actually hungry. He watches as Sandra puts the cap back on the syrup.
Did I ever tell you about how?
Yes,
Edward is startled.
the maple tree and the Buick. We heard it.
I think someone hasn't.
The tree fell on the car, spilling the syrup, which attracted the flies, which got stuck to it and flew up with the whole car.
A beat.
But the real story is how I got to the car. You see,
Dad,
son.
can we talk?
Sandra snaps the cap back on the syrup.
I'm going to get started on dishes.
I'll help you.
Both women quickly gather plates. Will and Edward both smile. The women clearly want this to happen. It settles for a beat after they leave.
Do you know much about icebergs, Dad?
Do I? I saw an iceberg once. They were hauling it down to Texas for drinking water. Only they didn't count on an elephant being frozen inside. The woolly kind, a mammoth.
Dad,
What?
I'm trying to make a metaphor here.
Then it shouldn't have started with a question, because people want to answer questions. You should have started with, the thing about icebergs is.
The thing about icebergs is you only see 10% of them. The other 90% is below the water where you can't see it. And that's what it is with you, Dad. I'm only seeing this little bit that sticks out above the water.
What? You're seeing down to my nose? To my nose? My chin?
I have no idea who you are because you have never told me a single fact.
I've told you 1,000 facts. That's all I do, Will. I tell stories.
You tell lies, Dad. You tell amusing lies. Stories are what you tell a 5-year-old at bedtime. They're not elaborate mythologies you maintain when your son is 10 and 15 and 20 and 30. And the thing is, I believed you. I believed your stories so much longer than I should have. And then when I realized that everything you said was impossible, everything, I felt like such a fool to have trusted you. You were like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny combined, just as charming and just as fake.
You think I'm fake?
Only on the surface. But that's all I've ever seen.
Edward looks away, angry and disbelieving.
Dad, I'm about to have a kid of my own here. It would kill me if he went through his whole life never understanding me.
It would kill you, huh?
Finally,
What do you want, Will? Who do you want me to be?
Yourself. Good, bad, everything. Just show me who you are for once.
I've been nothing but myself ever since the day I was born. And if you can't see that, it's your failing, not mine.
Exterior backyard day. With a skimmer pole, Will cleans the leaves and debris out of the pool, but it's a fool's errand. The pool has long since gone native, a shiny slick of algae on the surface, slime covering the cemented rocks. Suddenly, an underwater shape ripples against the water's surface. Will is so startled that he drops his pole, which disappears into the murky water. A beat. He looks around, relieved no one saw that. He casually walks away. Suddenly, an underwater shape ripples under the surface. Interior basement storage area day. The doors open to reveal Sandra, Will, and Josephine staring into the mouth of oblivion. The storeroom is a museum of hasty decisions and half-finished projects. Partially built outboard motors, dead bonsai trees, Frankensteinian lawnmowers. We also find boxes of products Edward used to sell. Clearing a path, Sandra leads Will to a roll-top desk, its ribs covered in dust. 2 beaten metal file cabinets sit beside it.
Your father decided he needed to have an office, and it wouldn't do to have it in the house. You'll know better than me what's important.
With some effort, Will forces up the desktop. With a hiss, a neighbor's cat makes a run for it. Will's getting used to being startled. Interior, basement storage area. Will, Sandra, and Josephine have worked through 2 trash bags of papers to throw out. Looking through a new file, Sandra makes a small sound. A memory.
What is it?
Sandra hands Will a yellowed telegram. He shares it with Josephine.
It was during the war. Your father went missing. They thought he was dead.
Will can't believe what he's reading.
That really happened?
Not everything your father says is a complete fabrication.
A beat. Then Sandra stands.
I'm going to check on him.
I need to lie down for a bit.
Go.
Josephine kisses him, then follows Sandra. Will rereads the telegram, still bewildered. Looking for a place to put it, he tucks it into a strange mechanical hand on the desk. It clamps down automatically. Will smiles, a memory. He hasn't thought about this device in years. He slowly pushes in on the telegram, held in the hand. Edward's voice begins as a memory.
After the war, the sons of Alabama returned home looking for work. Each had an advantage over me. They were alive while I was officially deceased.
Interior downtown office day. Story. Edward shakes hands with his new boss, a 2-paid man. The company is called Confederated Products. The office ladies all loved Edward.
With my prospects view, I took a job as a traveling salesman. It suited me. If there is one thing you can say about Edward Bloom, it's that I am a social person.
Exterior county fair day. Story. On a low platform, Edward pitches a brilliant new product to the crowd.
I've traveled from Tennessee to Timbuktu, and if there's one thing people have in common, it is we all could use a hand around the house.
Edward sets down a contraption, which looks something like a metal lava lamp. Like a flower, it unfolds to reveal 5 fingers and a thumb. This is the hand around the house. Trademark.
Why, with this product you can...
Quick montage as he demonstrates.
Open a jar, open a letter, scratch yourself while wearing mittens, hold a book, hold a baby, hold a dog away from kittens. It's strong enough that you can do a handstand with no hands at all.
Indeed, a remarkably agile Edward is able to support his entire weight on it. The crowd applauds.
You can use it to point out important information, or dangers, or beautiful women.
The hand points a finger at a heavy-set man in overalls.
We're still working on that one.
The crowd laughs. Exterior country road day. Edward drives, his hand out in the wind.
Soon I added other products and other cities until my territory stretched from the coast of western Texas.
Exterior trailer park day. Edward kisses his pregnant wife goodbye, as much in love as ever.
I could be gone for weeks at a time, But every other Friday, I put all the money I made into an account and set aside for a proper house with a white picket fence.
Exterior Horizon Savings and Loan Day. Establishing this Texas institution, we come Interior Horizon Savings and Loan Day. The bank is busy with the lunch hour crowd. Taking his place in line, Edward fills out a deposit slip. As the line snakes around through the ropes, the man in front of him gets a look at Edward.
Edward? Edward Bloom?
The man is none other than...
It's me, Northern Winslow.
I was astonished to see the greatest poet of Ashton and Spectra, all the way out in Texas.
The men shake, disbelieving this lucky coincidence.
I don't believe it. Muted. Northern Winslow says.
Sorry about that. One-handed conundrum. Anyway, I want you to know, you left Spectrum with when it opened my eyes. There was a whole life out there that I was not living. So I traveled. I saw friends. I saw Africa, half of South America. Every day a new adventure. And that's my motto.
That's great, Norther. I'm happy for you. I can't believe I helped.
He's genuinely proud.
So what are you up to now?
Oh, I'm robbing this place.
Reaching the front of the line, Norther pulls out 2 pistols out of his coat, firing both into the ceiling. Screams all around. The skinny security guard makes half-hearted reach for his gun, but Norther waves him off. The guard takes out his gun and slides it over.
Would you mind grabbing that?
There's nothing threatening about his delivery. He might as well be asking for a Budweiser. Still, Edward senses it would be best to do as he says. He takes the guard's gun.
Now, I want you to all lie down. I'm going to clean out the cash drawers and to my associate, give the handle of the vault. You, help my friend, okay?
The teller woman nods. Angle on Edward, not sure what to do. He has a gun, but he truly doesn't want to shoot Norther. The teller woman is already waving him to the back. He decides he better go. Interior at the vault day. The teller woman is crying as she works the combination. Edward feels horrible.
Look, I'm really sorry. I just don't want anybody to get hurt.
It's not that. It's just...
She pulls the vault door open. Interior, the vault day. Inner sanctum of the Horizon Savings and Loan holds exactly 1 folding chair. Nothing else.
There's no money. We're completely bankrupt.
It turned out that the savings and loan had already been robbed, not by armed bandits, but by speculators in Texas real estate.
You gotta promise you won't tell anybody.
Interior, Edward's car, day. Edward drives the getaway car, though truthfully, they're going just a little over the speed limit. No one's following them. It's an empty country road for miles. Norther hollers with body-tingling joy as he counts the money.
60, 80, $400. Not bad for the drawers. Let's see what you got from the vault.
Edward winces but doesn't say anything yet. Digging through the vault bag, Norther is surprised to find only a single deposit envelope. He rips it open, revealing just a little cash inside, even some dimes and pennies.
Is that it?
Afraid so.
Edward, I've got it's got your deposit slip in it.
Caught, Edward had to confess.
Look, I just didn't want you to go empty-handed. There's something you should know, Norther. You see, the reason why...
Edward continues his narration.
I told Norther about the vagaries of Texas oil money and its effects on real estate prices and how lax enforcement and fiduciary process had made savings and loans particularly vulnerable. Hearing this news, Norther was left with one conclusion.
Exterior, Texas Road day. Norther leans in the driver's side window.
I should go to Wall Street. That's where all the money is.
Edward looks over at Norther, the reality sinking in.
I knew then that while my days as a criminal were over, Northers were just beginning.
The two men wave at each other as Edward drives off. At the last moment, Norther calls out,
Edward, thank you for the hand.
He's talking about his hand around the house. We hold on Norther for a beat, dreaming of his future.
When Norther made his first $1 million, he sent me a check for $10,000. I protested, but he said it was my fee as a career advisor.
Exterior Bloom House, mid-late 70s day. Sandra is watching the garden. Will, 5, runs past her to greet Edward, just returned from another trip.
$10,000 is no fortune to most men, but it was enough to buy my wife a proper house with a white picket fence.
We reveal the Bloom House, the nicest one in the neighborhood. Edward kisses his wife.
And for that, it was all the riches a man could ever want.
Sandra drops the hose, letting it run on the lawn. Transition to interior Bloom House, bathroom day, present. Close on Edward's hand as he turns knobs. Close on water splashing onto the clawfoot bathtub, which begins to fill. Still wearing his pajamas, Edward climbs into the tub, carefully lowers himself. As the water reaches the third button up on his pajama shirt, Edward suddenly slides underwater. Bubbles rise from his nose for a few beats, then stops. It's quiet, except for the distant splashing of water from the spigot. Edward's eyes are closed. A long beat. Another. Then the splashing water goes silent. Edward opens one eye. The other eye. He sits up to find Sandra sitting on the edge of the tub. She doesn't seem particularly worried. Her husband has always done this.
I was drying out.
I see. We need to get you one of those plant misters. He can spray you like a fern.
He smiles, then pulls his knees up, making room for her in the tub. A beat while she considers. Sandra steps out of her sandals and climbs into the tub, facing him. Her dress is soaked, but she doesn't mind. He leans forward and kisses her. When they separate, she has tears hanging in her eyes.
Come now.
He wipes them away.
I don't think I'll ever dry out.
Interior basement storage area day. Perched awkwardly on a canoe, Will's made it through another file cabinet. He goes through the folders page by page, but usually ends up tossing the whole thing in the trash. He's about to toss a file when he stops, takes another look. Something doesn't make sense. Interior Bloomhouse stairs day. Will is headed upstairs when his mother comes around the corner with an armful of laundry, including her wet dress.
Is he awake?
He just fell asleep. Josephine's with him.
She passes him. He turns.
Mom?
Yes?
Will quickly debates whether or not to ask her.
Did you and Dad have any other property?
I suppose your grandmother's house when she passed? But we sold that right away. Your cousin Shirley bought it.
So you never bought any land?
Heavens, no. We had a hard enough time keeping the mortgage on this place.
Will nods, just curious. He continues heading up. Interior Will and Josephine's room day. Will changes his shirt. He takes his keys off the nightstand. Exterior Country Road day. Will's rental car drives past a sign reading Ashton 10 miles. Interior Will's car day, driving. Will checks the address on one of his father's files. Exterior Ashton Gas day. Will talks to the attendant who points him in a direction, then gestures a series on the left, right, left, right. Exterior road day. Will drives down a road that seems somewhat familiar. And when we realize why, a road sign reads, Welcome to Spectre. Exterior Alone House day. Sitting at the edge of a swamp, a little two-story feels lonely, set deep in its lot. Dapples of light break through the trees, a light breeze swaying in the branches. As Will walks from the car, the whir of cicadas grows. He checks the number. 33. This is the house. It is surrounded by a white square picket fence identical to his mother's. Will notices this. Reaching the porch, we hear a piano playing inside. Badly. Rechecking the number on the form he's carrying, Will knocks. The piano stops.
Go back to the start. Right hand only.
The piano starts again. Footsteps. The door opens to reveal a blonde woman in her 50s, the woman from the grocery store. Her name is Jenny Hill. She and Will are startled to see each other.
Oh,
Hello.
I wasn't expecting you.
Confused, Will checks the name on the form.
Are you Jenny Hill?
I am, and you're Will. I've seen your picture. That's how I recognized you. I almost said something at the store, but it would have been awkward. Like this.
The piano student, a black boy of 8, has stopped. He's watching the conversation at the door. Speaking of awkward.
Listen, Kenny, why don't we skip the lesson today? We can go again next week.
She hands him $5 out of her pocket.
Do I have to give it back to my mom?
I won't tell her if you won't.
You don't have to tell him twice. He's out the door in a flash. Interior, Jenny's kitchen day. While Will sips his iced tea, Jenny flips through a form she never expected to see again. She hands it back to Will.
How did you know my father?
Well, this was on his sales route, so he was through here all the time. Everyone in town knew him.
A beat, not flinching.
Were you and my father having an affair?
Wow, you just said it. I was expecting to dance around this for another half hour.
I've seen him with women. He flirts. He always has. On some level, I presumed he was cheating on my mother. I just never had proof.
She moves, trying to get out of the corner he's boxed her into. Once she's finally free.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you come here today? If you found this deed, why didn't you just ask Eddie?
Because he's dying.
A long beat. Jenny is taken back by the suddenness of it. She's a tangle of conflicting emotions.
Look, I don't know how much you want to know about any of this. You have one image of your father, and it would be wrong for me to go and change it, especially this late in the game.
My father talked about a lot of things he never did, and I'm sure he did a lot of things he never talked about. I'm just trying to reconcile the two.
Fair enough. Jenny takes a seat across from him at the table.
The first thing you have to understand is that your father never meant to end up here. And yet he did, twice. The first time, he was early. The second time, he was late.
Interior, Edward's car driving night. It's late and Edward is pensive.
Those days, your father was working for himself. If there was one thing you could say about Edward Bloom, it's that he was a special person, and people took a liking to him. And one night, he was returning from 3 weeks on the road when he hit a thunderstorm unlike any in his life.
The first raindrops hit the windshield. Edward turns on the wipers. Interior, Edward's car, night, the storm. Suddenly, a deluge descends. It's not even rain anymore. There's no space between the drops. It's like being caught in a waterfall. It's that loud. No choice, Edward stops the car, puts on the handbrake. Just as suddenly, the sound changes. No longer pounding, but softly splashing. The world is close and echoing because exterior, Edward's car, night. The car is underwater. The tires are still on the road, but where there used to be air is water. 3 catfish swim in front of the headlights. Interior, the car, night. Realizing his plight, Edward tries to remain calm. Water is trickling in through the crack between the window and the door, but very slowly. For now, he's fine. That's when he sees her, the girl in the river. She's swimming outside the car. While we never see her face exactly, she remains just as beautiful, just as mysterious as the first time we saw her. She puts her hand to the windshield. He puts his up to meet hers and smiles. Flash cut to exterior field by dirt road day. It's morning and the sun shines brightly. Birds chirp. Trees drip and the grass shines, still wet from last night's rain. Edward gathers the clothes that have spilled out of his suitcase, which broke open when he dropped it from his car, which balances precariously 10 feet up in an elm tree. As Edward gathers his last pair of socks, he notices a shiny piece of metal sticking out of the dirt. He pulls it out, rubs it off. It's a key. It's the key to the city he lost years ago.
Fate has a way of circling back on a man and taking him by surprise.
Exterior road day. Carrying his busted suitcase, a tired Edward walks through a one-street town in the distance. We pass a rusty sign, "Welcome to Spectre." Exterior Main Street day. Amazed and disbelieving, Edward walks down the center of the road. No cars coming from either direction. He looks up to find his faded shoes still dangling from the power line, along with the rest of the town's.
A man sees things differently at different times in his life. This town seemed the same now that he was older. It doesn't seem the same.
Exterior town of Spectre, various shots. We look around the town, on and off Main Street. There are for sales signs in many of the windows.
A new road had brought the outside world to Spectre, and with it, banks, liens, and debt. Almost everywhere you looked, people were bankrupt.
Exterior Spectre day. We slowly move through a foreclosure auction to find Edward watching. Two very corporate men in suits stick out among the bidders.
Two different corporations were looking at buying the town. If they could get the price low enough, one wanted to open a chicken processing plant and the other a municipal dump. Either way, Spectre would be destroyed.
Edward raises his hand.
50,000.
Everyone turns to look at this new bidder.
And so Edward Bloom decided to buy the town in order to save it.
Interior Norther Winslow's Manhattan day. Edward pitches his plan to Norther.
He was never a wealthy man, but he had made other men rich, and now he asked for their favors.
Interior, exterior, various locations day, various shots, expressive and passionate. As always, Edward talks to Ping, Jing, and Amos Calloway.
Most of them had never seen Spectre. They only had Edward's words to describe it. That's all they needed. He sold them on the dream. You can structure it as a historical trust, but you'll never need every contiguous piece of property. It's all or nothing.
As Edward takes notes.
So first he bought the farms, and then he bought the houses, and then he bought the stores.
Interior, Al's country day. Finishing up with Al, Edward shakes hands.
Whatever he bought, the people were not asked to leave or pay rent or anything. They were just asked to keep doing as they were doing. In that way, he could make sure the town would never die.
Exterior, road in the swamp day. Edward climbs out of his car, the road having literally stopped. The sun is shining, but it can barely penetrate the tree's thick canopy.
Within 6 months, his trust had purchased the entire town, with one exception.
In the distance, he sees a shack, so old it's nearly fallen. He walks toward it, the marshy ground squishing up around his feet, soaking the hems of his trousers. We hear a piano playing from inside the shack. Edward knocks on the half-hung door, which swings open by itself. Interior, shack day. The inside is nicer than you'd think, a real home. A fire burns in the stove, and curtains hang in the windows. With her back turned to him, Jenny Hill plays the piano. Edward doesn't recognize her as the little girl who used to have a crush on him. Without turning, she says,
"You must be Edward Bloom."
How did you know?
She keeps playing.
No one would come out here unless they had business. And no one would have business with me except for you. You're buying the town.
Apparently, I overlooked this one piece of it. and I like to remedy that. You see, in order for the town to be preserved, the trust must own it in its entirety.
So I've heard.
I'll offer you more than it's worth, and you know you won't have to move. Nothing will change except the name on the deed. You have my word.
Jenny stops playing, her piece not quite finished. She turns to face him. Edward still doesn't recognize her.
Now, let me get this straight. You'll buy the swamp from me, but I'll stay in it. You'll own the house, but it'll still be mine. I'll be here, and you'll come and go as you please to one place or another. Do I have that right?
Strange to hear it put that way, but
In so many words, yes.
Then I don't think so, Mr. Bloom. If nothing is going to change, I'd just as soon it not change in the way it hasn't been changing all this time.
It's not like you're going to lose anything. You can ask anyone in town. I've been nothing if not generous. I want the best for everyone.
a long beat.
Mr. Bloom, why are you buying this land? Some sort of a midlife crisis? Instead of buying a convertible, you buy a town?
He looks at her, puzzled and surprised. No one has really asked before.
Helping people makes me happy.
I'm not convinced you should be happy.
I'm sorry? Have I offended you?
She finally turns to face him.
No, you did exactly what you promised. You came back. I was just expecting you sooner.
Flashback to exterior Spectre night. Young Jenny Hill watches barefoot Edward leave Spectre for the first time. Interior shack day. Finally realizing who this woman is.
You're Beeman's daughter. Your last name is different. You married?
I was 18. He was 28. Turns out that was a big difference.
Before he can say anything more,
I won't be selling you this house, Mr. Bloom.
I see. Thank you for your time.
a bit bewildered, Edward tips his hat to her as he leaves. Interior, exterior, swamp shack day. Edward pulls the door shut behind him as he leaves, but it breaks off in his hands. It's not the clean exit he was hoping for. Inside, Jenny looks out, surprised and annoyed. Edward tries to lift the door back on the hinges, but they snap off. The door frame buckles and the whole shack creaks.
I'm sorry.
He tries to lean the door against the frame, but it keeps slipping.
It's okay. Just leave it.
I can get it. I can. Just...
He leans the door a different way. It holds for a beat, then falls in, smashing a small table.
Lauren, I'm sorry.
Please, go. Just go.
I'll...
Go.
She's dead serious. Weighing the scales of chivalry, he finally backs away, turns and heads back toward his car. We stay on Jenny, watching him go. She's furious, but there's something more in her feelings for him. Something softer.
Most men in that situation would accept their failure and move on. But Edward was not like most men.
Exterior, Swamp Shack Road, another day. With Carl the Giant's help, Edward unloads a brand new door from a pickup truck. Exterior, shack day. While Jenny watches, half annoyed, half amused, Edward tries to set the door square. Carl pushes against the side of the house until it fits. Interior, shack, another day. Holding nails between his lips, Edward puts in new windows himself. Jenny is making soup, laughing at the stories he's telling.
As the months passed, he found more and more things to fix, until the shack no longer resembled itself.
Exterior, swamp, another day. Edward and Carl cut down a tree, letting in a flood of light. Through the golden pollen hanging in the air, we rise up to see the shack is now the lovely house we saw before. It's tiny and white with black shutters and a steep roof, a white picket fence. In every detail, it is impossibly charming. Interior, Jenny's house day. Edward is screwing a hat rack into the wall in the foyer. Jenny leans against the doorframe, listening to his story and watching him with the deepest affection.
Of course, the best part was creating new material. By the time the twins and I had got to Havana, we had a whole new routine worked out for them. with just a ukulele and a harmonica.
Finished with his work, he takes his hat off the chair and hangs it on the rack. Perfect. A beat. A look between them. With that last job done, there's no reason for him to be staying any longer.
I suppose I should.
He takes his hat off the rack.
You can leave it there.
A beat. Does she really mean it? She comes closer. Edward holds his ground. She takes his hand, lifting his hat up to the peg. She's very close, just half an inch from kissing him when Edward gently holds her back.
No.
She freezes, stunned and humiliated. She pulls away.
Don't be embarrassed. I should never have let you think that I am in love with my wife.
I know.
And from the moment I saw her until the moment I die, she's the only one.
Lucky girl.
I'm sorry, Jenny. I am.
With that, he begins to leave.
Wait, Edward.
She finds a pen and hastily signs the deed to her house, hands it to him. With a look, he thanks her, then he goes. Exterior Spectre, the magic hour. Edward takes a final look at this perfect little town.
One day, Edward Bloom left and never returned to the town he'd saved.
He climbs in his car and starts the engine. Exterior Jenny Hill's house day to night. As we watch, the swamp begins to overtake the house, swallowing it in a tangle of vines and mossy branches. Shoots burst up through the planks in the porch. Snakes slither through the marsh. Day becomes night.
As for the girl, the common belief was that she'd become a witch, and crazy at that. She became something of a legend herself.
We reverse to find 4 kids looking in through the rusty iron gate with flashlights. A beat, then they run away.
And the story ended where it began.
Interior Jenny Hill's kitchen, present day. Will and Jenny are still sitting at her table, a pitcher of iced tea between them.
Logically, you couldn't be the witch because she was old back when he was young.
No, it's logical if you think like your father. See, to him, there's only 2 women, your mother and everyone else.
You didn't become crazy.
Well, therapy. And one day I realized I was in love with a man who could never love me back. I was living in a fairy tale.
Will smiles to hear it called that.
People aren't like they are in stories. They hurt each other without meaning to. They are kind and unbelievably cruel at the same time. Like me now. I'm not sure I should have told you any of this.
Her composure is starting to break.
No, I wanted to know. I'm glad I know.
A long beat, both staring at their iced tea. Jenny is working herself into more of a state by not talking.
I wanted to meet you for the longest time. I did. I envied you so much. The way Eddie would talk about you when you were at Missouri, that award you won. Congratulations, incidentally. And when you got the job at the AAP, everything. He was so proud of you. I mean, that's the thing. Every moment he loved you.
She's fighting tears, not the first one she's shed over this.
And as brightly as the sun would shine when he was with you, every time he left, it disappeared. I wanted to be as important to him as you were, and I was never going to be. I was make-believe, and his other life, you, were real.
Angle on Will, sorting through his swirling thoughts.
You knew that, didn't you?
Cut to interior Will's car day driving. Will skips through the stations on the radio, but ultimately turns it off. He's trying to think. Exterior Bloomhouse dusk. Will walks up the front steps. There's a subtle change to his expression, a dark cloud lifted. He unlocks the door. Interior Bloomhouse foyer dusk. It's half dark and quiet in the house. No talking, no TV. Will sets his keys on the table. Interior kitchen dusk. Will looks in, empty.
Hello? Mom? Dad?
Interior upstairs hallway desk. We follow Will looking into his and Josephine's room. He aims for the guest room at the end of the hall. Interior guest room desk. Looking over his shoulder, we see his father's bed is empty. The sheets are in a triangle on the floor. A beat, then Will half runs back down the hall, back down the stairs. Interior foyer dusk. Headed out, Will grabs his keys off the table. We look right where the message light blinks on the answering machine. Interior hospital entrance night. The hospital is so new it's not even finished. Thick plastic hangs from the exposed framing. There's no one at the information desk, so Will forges ahead. Interior hospital hallway night. Will reads a directory board, then trying to decide the best place to start. When behind him,
Will,
he turns to see his wife at a payphone. She hangs up. She was calling him.
What happened?
your father had a stroke. He's upstairs with your mom and Dr. Bennett.
Is he going to be okay?
A beat. How can she answer? He half smiles, realizing the idiocy of his question. Of course his father's not going to be okay.
What I mean is, will he get back to the way he was when...
No, he won't. I'm sorry.
And like that, it's done. We hold on Will, reeling from the news. Interior hospital room night. Edward sleeps peacefully, just an oxygen tube under his nose. There are no beeping monitors, no blinking lights. It's mercifully quiet. Sandra squeezes Will's hand tightly. She's holding herself together, but it's been a tough day. Dr. Bennett has just gone through the details for the third time.
I don't suppose one of us could stay with him in case he wakes up. One of us should be there.
I'll stay. Why don't you go home with Josephine and I'll stay tonight?
That's okay.
It's fine.
You'll call if...
I will. I'll call.
A beat.
Mom, do you want some time with Dad?
Yes, thank you.
A nod. Then Will holds the door for Dr. Bennett and Josephine as they leave. Sandra is alone in the room with her husband. She neatens his hair, holds his hand. As she kisses his fingers, she tweaks her chin with them, his signature move. Transition to interior hospital hallway night. Sandra waits outside the women's restroom. Her face is a study in strained composure, acknowledging the inevitable but refusing to surrender it. Josephine emerges.
I'm sorry. It seems every hour I have to.
I know. It was the same when I was carrying Will, like clockwork.
The two women start to walk. No hurry.
Do you like it? Being pregnant?
I do.
I loved it. It sounds peculiar, but I loved every minute of it. I did. Eddie was traveling a lot, so he was gone, but I felt like I always had a piece of him with me, a little part of his soul inside of me. I could feel it. It was alive and kicking.
Sandra has accidentally evoked a storm of emotion. She struggles to keep it in check. Almost a whisper.
I really miss that.
With a few breaths, Sandra tries to hold back.
Don't stop. Don't.
A beat, then Sandra finally melts. Josephine holds her. The two women stand together in the hallway, letting the moment be. Interior hospital room night. Will sits in a chair beside the bed, working through the crossword puzzle. A knock as Dr. Bennett enters with his overcoat and bag, ready to leave for the night.
Glad to see you're not trying to have a heartfelt talk. It's one of my greatest annoyances when people talk to those who can't hear them.
My father and I have an advantage. We never talk.
Dr. Bennett smiles as he checks Edward's chart.
How long have you known my father?
30 years, maybe more.
How would you describe him?
5'11", 180, regulated hypertension. How would his son describe him?
Tables turned, Will searches for an answer. He doesn't have one. Dr. Bennett hangs the chart back on the bed.
Did your father ever tell you about the day you were born?
1,000 times. He caught an uncatchable fish.
No, not that one. The real story. Did he ever tell you that?
No.
Your mother came in about 3 in the afternoon. Her neighbor drove her on account of your father was on business in Wichita. You were born a week early, but there were no complications. It was a perfect delivery. Now, your father was sorry to miss it, but it wasn't the custom for the men to be in the room for deliveries then, so I can't see as it would have been much different had he been there. And that's the real story of how you were born.
A long silence, just the sounds of the hospital, doctors being paged.
Now, not very exciting, is it? And I suppose if I had to choose between the true version and an elaborate one involving a fish and a wedding ring, well, I might choose the fancy version. But that's just me.
Will half smiles. Patting Will's shoulder, Dr. Bennett leaves. We stay on Will and his father for a long time. Then Will takes his pen and starts making a list. Interior hospital room, various shots. Will flips to a new page. The list keeps getting longer. He smiles, remembering something. On his 4th page, he looks up at his motionless father. A beat, then we slowly crossfade to interior hospital room pre-dawn. It's very early morning, and the first blue light of day is glowing through the vertical blinds. Still in his chair, Will wakes up a bit at a time. The notepad is on his lap. The pen is in his hand. He cracks his neck, crooked from sleeping on it wrong. What woke him up? He looks to his right, holds his gaze for a breath.
Dad?
His father is awake, silently gasping for breath. His eyes are open, scared and confused.
Dad, do you want me to get a nurse?
Edward shakes his head unambiguously. Will already has his finger on the orange nurse call button, but doesn't push it.
What can I do? Can I help? Can I get you something? Water?
Edward nods. Will pours a glass from the pitcher on the nightstand. He holds it to his father's lips, but Edward won't drink. He pushes it away. He wanted something else.
The river.
The river?
It takes Edward all his strength to put together each thought. It's like he's only half there, fighting to hang on to this world.
Tell me how it happens.
How what happens?
How I go.
On Will, realizing.
You mean what you saw in the eye?
Edward nods. Yes, that's what he was trying to say. A long beat.
I don't know the story, Dad. You never told me that one.
Will pushes his fingers under his father's heavy hand and holds it. There's nothing else to do. Edward looks around, confused and increasingly scared. He sees the end approaching, but doesn't know exactly what's coming. Without the story, he's lost, fighting the urge to panic.
I can try, Dad, if you help. Just tell me how it starts.
Like this.
Okay.
Will looks around the room, increasingly desperate. He looks to the nurse call button. He really wants to press it. On Edward, waiting for Will to begin.
Okay. It's morning, and you and I are in the hospital. I'd fallen asleep in the chair. I wake up, and I see you, and...
Interior hospital room day, story version.
Dad?
It's dawn, and the first golden glow is shining through the vertical blinds.
Dad?
We look over to find a nimble Edward sitting up in bed, combing his hair.
Let's get out of here.
Somehow, you're better. Different. You're getting ready to go, and I say, Dad, you're in no condition to...
But Edward throws back the covers.
There's a fold-up wheelchair in the bathroom Wrap a blanket around me. As soon as we get off this floor, we'll be in the clear.
Will heads for the bathroom. Sure enough, the wheelchair is there.
Hurry, we don't have much time.
Interior hospital hallway day. With the blanket draped over his head like a ghost, Edward points for his son to steer the wheelchair that way.
Faster!
They pass a heavy-set nurse who turns to look. Rounding a corner, they nearly crash into Dr. Bennett.
Will, what are you doing?
Before he can answer, Will spots Edward rolling the chair himself, pumping both arms. Will dashes to catch up with him. The heavy-set nurse leans out of Edward's hospital room.
Nurse Vicky.
Security, stop them!
Down the hall, at the elevator, Sandra and Josephine step out to find Will and Edward barreling straight at them.
No time to explain. Follow us.
Seeing security guards heading their way, a quick-thinking Sandra shoves a nearby cart into them, bowling them down. Interior elevator day. Will brakes hard, sliding with both feet. The chair nearly crashes into the back wall as the doors close. Exterior parking lot day. Will races Edward down the row, finally reaching the Chevrolet. At the car, Will lifts his father out of the chair.
I pick you up and you hardly weigh anything. I can't explain it.
Will sets him in the passenger seat.
Water. I need water.
Scrambling in back, Will finds a liter of Arrowhead, hands it off. Edward unscrews the cap, but instead of drinking it, he douses himself, soaks the blanket. Will pops the trunk, starts to unfold the wheelchair.
Leave it. We won't need it.
Tires smoke as the car peels out. Interior hospital room day, reality. Tight on Will, trying to hold back tears as he talks.
And we have to take Glenville to avoid all the church traffic because those damn church people drive too slow.
Tight on Edward, enjoying that detail. He's focused completely on Will's story.
I ask.
Exterior Glenville Boulevard day, story version. The Chevy slaloms through the Sunday morning traffic.
Where are we headed? You say.
Interior Chevy day.
The river.
Will stops short, the traffic backed up. He honks, trying to get around the jam, but it's no use. Then up ahead, the cars start moving, shoved aside by massive hands. It's Carl the Giant, clearing a path by brute force. Edward leans out the window and waves. Carl waves back. Exterior Ashton River day. The same stretch of river where it all began. A crowd of more than 100 waiting.
As we get closer to the river, we see everybody's already there. And I mean everyone.
Amos Calloway is here with the circus folk, including Mr. Soggy Bottom. We also find Edward's mother and father, the mayor, and many others from along the way. No one has aged a day since we saw them last. While Ping scans the horizon, Jing nuzzles her with her boyfriend, Norther Winslow. It's Ping who first spots the Chevrolet.
He's here.
The crowd cheers. The Ashton marching band plays. Jenny Hill smiles. So does the old woman. We push in on the old woman's glass eye, where we see young Edward reflected. This is what he saw. Interior, the Chevrolet day. Amazed, Will turns to his father.
It's unbelievable.
Story of my life.
Exterior Riverside day. Will gets out of the Chevrolet, overwhelmed by the crowd. Behind him, Sandra, Josephine, and Dr. Bennett pull up. Carl comes just after that. Crossing to the passenger side, Will lifts his father out. Strangely, he's gotten even lighter. Will carries him easily. Edward pulls off his shoes, tying the laces together. He hands them to Josephine. She throws them up at the power line. They loop over. Applause and cheers. The crowd parts to let Will and Edward get to the river. As he passes, Edward shakes some hands, pats some people on the cheek, and gives others a good poke in the ribs.
And the strange thing is, there's not a sad face to be found. Everyone's just so glad to see you and send you off right.
Will walks into the river up to his knees. He turns back so his father can face the crowd. Edward waves.
Goodbye, everybody. Farewell. Adieu.
Bye, Edward.
Bye. See ya.
Bye. See ya. Miss you.
But one face is missing from the crowd. Sandra. Will turns to see she's already standing in the rivers beside them. The reflection of the light off the water gives Sandra an unearthly glow. She's more tranquil and more beautiful than we'd ever seen her.
My girl in the river.
She kisses him. He tweaks her chin. The crowd hollers in approval, but their moment remains strangely private. Only Will is there to witness. As the kiss ends, Edward tries to pull off his wedding ring, but it's stuck. Finally, he sucks on it, pulling it free with his teeth. A look to Will, a smile with a glint of gold. Will takes the ring out of his mouth. Edward suddenly drops out of Will's arms with a splash. For he's no longer a man, but rather a fat catfish swimming at his feet. We watch as the catfish circles, then heads for deeper water, disappearing. Will and his mother stand knee-deep in the water, watching Edward Bloom swim away into the sunlight. Josephine is back on shore, along with the entire crowd. Music builds to a climax. Then, down the river, a giant fish suddenly jumps out of the water, cutting a beautiful arc across the sunset. It then dives back under with a splash. Crossfade back to interior hospital room day. Will has tears hanging in the corners of his eyes.
You become what you always were, a very big fish. And that's the way it happens.
Yes, exactly.
Edward smiles, proud of both of them. His eyes are so pale and so open, he can almost see his soul. In every atom of his body, in every thought, Edward Bloom is entirely happy. And this is how he goes. Interior hospital hallway day. Will shuts the door to his father's room behind him. The walk to the payphone seems to take a lifetime. He finds a quarter, starts to dial. He has to squint through the water in his eyes. It's ringing and ringing. The other end answers.
Hi.
That's all he can get out before the dam breaks inside him. He presses closer to the phone, trying to shield himself. Music begins that will carry us through the next passage. Interior hospital reception day. Will waits at reception as Sandra and Josephine come off the elevator. Interior guest room day. Josephine opens the curtains, letting the white sunlight in. She strips the bed. Interior bedroom day. Will and his mother pick out one of Edward's ties for Will to wear at the funeral. Will tries to button the cuffs on the shirt he borrowed, but they're the kind that needs links. He goes through the top drawer of the dresser, trying to find a matching pair. Further down, he finds a ribbon tied to the key to the city. He smiles, disbelieving. It's a real thing. Exterior Cemetery Road day. Will helps his mother out of a black sedan. She's well composed, not nearly the wreck we might have expected. Josephine hugs Dr. Bennett and shakes hands with his wife. The service is crowded, more than 200 people, many more than expected. As his mother talks to a well-wisher, Will looks left to see an Oldsmobile parking. Close on the license plates, Missouri. The passenger side door opens, but the man who steps out is barely visible over the door. He shuts it to reveal himself to be 70. It's Amos Calloway. Will doesn't recognize him. The driver climbs out, a size 15 foot on the gravel. We tilt up to see this man is huge. This man is Carl, now 55. He's not 12 feet tall, but at least 6'8". Close on Will, bewildered to see that this man really exists. Exterior cemetery graveside day. As the service gets ready to begin, Will guides his mother to a seat near the grave. Sitting beside Will, Josephine spots a stunning Asian woman, 50, behind them. A beat later, an identical face with glasses peers out. The woman's twin sister. It's Ping and Jing. Josephine almost gasps. She elbows Will, who turns to look. From this angle, the sisters seem conjoined, but then Jing steps forward. They're really two separate people. A sea of familiar faces, all of them aged through the years. Beeman, Northern Winslow, the mayor, and Zachy Price. Exterior cemetery day later. After the service, we see the crowd gathered in small groups. By the laughter and hand gestures, we can see they're telling stories. They're telling Edward's stories. We find Will watching them.
You ever heard a joke so many times you've forgotten why it's funny? But then you hear it again and suddenly it's new. You remember why you loved it in the first place.
Will joins in laughing. We slowly circle behind a monument, letting it black out the screen. Transition to exterior Bloom House backyard, day summer. Will sits on the porch with Sandra and Josephine, watching his son play in the pool with two neighbor kids.
So he said he'd fight the giant who was 15 feet tall.
No way.
Dad, that's right, isn't it?
Something like that.
See, so he was a giant, but my grandpa was going to fight him because he wasn't afraid of anything. He'd seen how he was going to die in this old lady's glass eye.
Will smiles as his son continues the tale, which fades. Sandra takes Will's hand in hers, just listening.
That was my father's final joke, I guess. A man tells his stories so many times that he becomes the stories. They live on after him.
Crossfade to exterior river, underwater day. A fat and happy catfish swims toward us.
And in that way, he becomes immortal.
The fish passes us with a splash. Cut to black. The end.
Woo. Well done, everyone.
Yeah.
Congrats. And again, Tony, thank you for reading the action descriptions so much.
Sure, no problem. Just next time when there's like a sad ending where somebody dies, let me know beforehand so I'm not like blubbering.
No, that was great.
Perfect.
Because this is what I read through The Iron Giant the first time by myself before we got on camera, and I was able to keep it together on camera. But yeah, this is what happens the first time
It's kind of perfect the way it happened, man. Because I mean, this is definitely a dedication to somebody who's lost somebody, you know, and a dedication to somebody who's lost their father, and you know, for somebody who has lost his father a little bit too early, you know, it's means a lot, man.
Yeah, as you know, the death scene was playing out, I was reflecting on the loss of my dad. I was thinking about the night he died. It was near the end of October 2014. He passed at 62 of a rare stage 4 cancer of the adrenal gland, and I had just brought my mother dinner, and then all of a sudden his breathing changed and he died while I was there. I saw him die, and it was just very strange. I had to sit for half an hour crying, and I just started thinking of that, and that's how I started crying. It was so strange.
Yeah.
We're
heroes,
all
man.
Here, Tony. Yeah. So if most of us were to be reading it, we'd have been doing the same thing, even though we've seen it.
Thanks.
Even though we know it's like sad at the end.
I wasn't even reading and I was busting up, you know? So thank you for taking the lead on that.
And I'm sure the author of the book and the screenplay will probably tears of appreciation to see that effect it had on people. You know, rather than us being prepared and hiding it.
That's the whole point of these stories, is to elicit emotion from people. So I guess you got it. Hopefully the snot bubbles weren't too bad.
Exactly. No. And the fact that they got it across here on the page and we all felt it.
Yeah. Oh, I love this script and movie.
I should watch this movie now.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
and certain things are clearer now in the script. Like, I mean, I guess but even with years past, you kind of forget or things blend because you're not like where on here in the script. It's like I forget how it worded it, like the dream reality or the whatever it called it. Like, because in the movie it switches there, but now in my memory, I forget going back to the hospital scenes. Like it almost remembers like that fake story was the true story or whatever.
Yeah.
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 So.
Yeah, it was really awesome, man. It was very different than last week's read, which if you guys didn't watch last week's read, go back and check it out. We did Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And that one was like really punchy and very short, very short and descriptive in how they did it. And this had a lot more like flowery language. It read a lot more like a book. There was more, I think, writing and artistic. I shouldn't say artistic because they're both art, right? But it definitely had like more language to it, you know.
But still shorter and tighter than many of the older scripts we've read so far.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. And yeah, it felt more like a modern screenplay than those others we've read, except for like the scene numbers that were in this particular PDF or whatever. But yeah. Any other thoughts? Thoughts from some that haven't read it? I mean, haven't seen the movie? Were you guys able to picture it or see the story as it was read, or?
It just brought back memories of having served as a caregiver, and it was very touching.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does read a lot different. I'm curious to like how that comes into the production aspect of it, you know, like, because this is very much a lot more visual, I would say, in how they described it. Like, was this somebody who, like, I wonder how the production went. Like, was it written for somebody as a writer? And then
it says it's based on a novel, so I'm sure he had lots of that imagery to pull from the novel as part of his adaptation. And I guess also probably making the movie, they could refer back to the novel to make sure they have all the imagery when they create it.
Yeah.
We should go back in one of the script notes and see if he ever did. He talked about Big Fish or whatever.
I just remember it being very stylized.
Mm-hmm.
And most of Tim Burton's stuff is very stylized. It's different style than what you would think is normal. That's why he's probably perfect to direct that.
Yeah, I love that. That's something I really enjoy in films. Even felt like Jacob and I watched one the other night that the visual was wonderful. The story was not so good, but I still enjoyed it because visually it was so striking and beautiful. So
when you go back and watch this, both are very striking. Both the visual is incredible, and of course the story, you know what that is.
Yeah, those who haven't seen it yet, I know you're going to now, but like it all comes together great. The visuals fantastic for the movie. Yeah.
Yes.
Agree. All right.
Yeah. I'd just like to apologize to anyone if I sounded more like Pavel Chekhov from Star Trek more than a French person.
What you're used to, right?
I don't know. I think I sounded more like Pavel Chekhov than a French person.
You'll have to listen back to it and see.
Yeah, I don't know. You guys can give me your opinions later.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I think there was one part, and I meant to make a mental note of which one, but I don't think I remember seeing it in the movie.
And the script even mentions it has omitted scenes in here.
Okay. Yeah. Is that it? When we were reading through, I thought that I don't remember that.
And there's certain things too, as we were reading it, like I remember watching the movie and I didn't feel like anything didn't belong. As we're reading, I'm like, man, this is going on quite long about this city and going back and all these other details. I'm like, maybe that was something they cut, but I'm like, it doesn't feel like this was needed or this would be cut out of the script. But if it was in the movie, I'm like, when I watched it, I'm like, oh, I was totally fine with it. But yeah, it felt like a part was going a little longer. So
I thought the Spectre thing was like an afterlife kind of spooky dream thing, but the town was like a real thing, wasn't it, in the show? Oh.
Yeah. And there's certain things that I've noticed more in the reading. Like I remember them saying in the movie when the little girl becomes the witch, they're just like, that's how it works. That's how the thing. But here in the reading it, it was even clearer to me, like, you got to understand that there's your mom and then every other woman. So that's why the woman is like the same. I'm like, oh, okay, I understand it better now, how they intended it. So that's cool.
Sweet. And he's so lovable. Just, I don't know, especially at the end when you see that the stories aren't just all far-fetched. They're from life.
I know that's a little spoiler for you guys reading it, but I guess you probably experienced it now. It's like when you see it, it's so cool because it's so much what, like he said, but just, a little more realistic, a little more believable, but it was all true. I'm sure you guys felt it now too, but seeing it, it's really cool.
Very embellished. Yeah. No, that was fun. I didn't see the chat going on while we were reading because I tried to do it once and then missed one of my lines. So I just shut the chat down and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, somebody said, not sure how you can keep a straight face while you're reading some of this.
Oh yeah, that was legendary, dude. Yeah, about my character. Right before he dies, that was awesome, man. I can't believe that was written on paper, dude. That was hilarious. Oh, for all you guys that have a foul mouth out there, don't worry. You can write it in script format, apparently.
Oh, sometimes they love it even more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, like, most of it is like super reserved and like they don't really use that much swearing in this movie, and then when they do it, it's like, I mean, think about it, dude. You're some kind of executive sitting down and you're just like reading scripts again and again and again, like, can I make this a bunch of money, right? And then you pull out a script like this and you read that, like, dude, there's no way you're not sitting in your office laughing and being like, let's go make this movie, man. Let's go buy this script, So for all you script writers out there, I can't even remember how they phrased it, but that was too funny.
Give it a voice, make it pop.
Was it the sitting on the toilet thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, taking a large turd. It was unshittable.
The euphemisms were pretty funny too.
Yeah,
with the milkman.
Yeah.
Man.
That was
going on and on and on. But it was so funny.
And certain things, like, I feel like they didn't put in the movie of, like, when there's slow-mo, like frozen time of the elephant in the middle of. Now we got to stop it because this is going to make people want to put more of like that type of humor in it. It's like, it worked here, but maybe not every script. Yeah.
Right. This was Tim Burton after all, right?
Yeah. And John August. And
yeah.
How much of that is in the novel too? I don't know. I haven't read it. But all right. Anything else before we call it?
Yeah, but I can't remember.
Well, this was a great script to pick up for the last minute. So good, great call. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And thank you all for reading multiple parts, and Deanne for coming on in the last minute to help out. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man. You're our fearless leader, and you had to do like an extended scene with just yourself. Impressive, man. Super impressive.
It was so good. And if you weren't watching just listening, it was like, yeah, it totally works. And then it still worked when I looked up, but it was like, oh yeah, he's doing both.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
It was enjoyable.
It all was enjoyable for everyone. So, all right. Then we'll go around. Everyone can say, what else they're doing, what's coming up, and where people can find them. And if you mention a link, if you send that to me, I'll put it in the description, and we'll try and put a time code eventually to this part in the video for people to quickly come here and see about you. So I'm going to go from on my screen the way it is. So again, Don Lapasoni, you're number one.
Oh, well, Don Lapasoni, you can always check out my work on myname.com or .net or whatever. And still doing work, in this field. Want to be doing more feature, short type stuff that's more fun than corporate and political. But, just working on that. So also working on my daughter getting into college, which is quite a feat in itself. She's going for musical theater. If anyone, I don't know why I brought this up right now, but it's they apply to like 17 schools, when you're doing that. It's interesting process. Wow. So yeah, it's not the norm.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing. Don't be ashamed of it. Tell your
he's not ashamed
at all. Not ashamed at all. No. Just
you know what? That's where it starts. The youth. I mean, I started my love of that, my work in that started when I was a teenager. So it's a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah. No.
He's just surprised by the process, right? That
yeah. We're just waiting around for her to get into the schools, and it's just a process. And I mean, I went for musical theater as well, but I only applied to one school and got in. So that was years ago. Now it's like a sports. It's like going out like you're a sports person now instead of it's harder than getting into a school for sports in some ways. So anyway, sorry.
It seems like so many things are harder now for the youth than when we were all growing up.
It's
all right, in my little thing, I'm next. So Jacob Patrick, you can go jacobpatrick.com or come back to here, Table Read Tuesdays. And we have the Facebook group. We're on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. And I did animation, previous video games, TV, movies, rides. And that's it. That's me. And so next we have Angelina Peterson.
Oh, yeah, I guess I'm still unmuted. I'm Angelina. And I was just realizing how much this has to do with my business, which is what I'm going to send you to now. Your Adored Life on Facebook is the best, easiest way to find it. And me. And it's all about storytelling. It's about the legacy that you leave behind. And even while you're here, all the stories that we have inside of us, and maybe that's one of the reasons why I love this movie so much, is it goes into those stories. And a little elaboration's okay.
And like you've mentioned before, that this father in this movie is a storyteller, and to be able to see it and hear it from the storyteller's voice themselves is great to capture. Sorry to interrupt, please.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So that's me.
All right. That link will be in the description. And next we have Deanne.
Well, I'm just starting to shop around a screenplay called Street that I wrote. It was first produced years ago as a one-act play, and then I've developed it into a full screenplay. So I'm just starting to shop that around. You can find me, my website is all about my sound healing work. So it's Sound Energy Healing. You can find me there.
Awesome. Congrats on the screenplay and the play it was based on that you had before. That's awesome. Next we have Vicky.
Vicky Dykes. Predominantly, I'm an actor. I'm dabbling writing a book, and I am a visual artist too. You can find me on Instagram. I'm YogaGramma7, and I'm also on Facebook as, guess what, Vicky Dykes. So if you have something that you'd like me to do voiceover, or hey, I have a little bit of experience.
Awesome. And next we have Heather Lee Cameron.
Hi, I'm Heather Lee Cameron. I've done acting, I've done voice acting, I've done self-producing, I've done writing, I've done journalism, I've done theater, I've done quite a bit. You can find me on my YouTube channel, The Storm and Latter-day Saint. You can find me on Facebook, Heather Lee Cameron, or Heather Lee Cameron, creative freelancer. You can find me on Instagram, Heather Lee Cameron. You can find me on Twitter, Chameleon77771. Actually, you can actually message me on Facebook and I'll direct you to the Twitter. What else? Oh yeah, I'm on Actors Access, IMDb. I've had quite a few creative careers over the years, and I'm so happy about all of them. And I'm quite happy to do acting, producing, writing, anything creative, as long as it doesn't go against my personal morals. So if you need anything done, I've got experience in a lot of things, and I can show you quite a bit of experience in my resume. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And next we have Clint Monroe.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Another fantastic read. Thank you so much for that. My name is Clint Monroe. I am in the process of absorbing all bits of information I want to do, writing, directing, acting, producing, because this is such a powerful medium and there's just so much you can do with it. And so you can find me on Instagram if you want. It's Gems of Zen Productions. You can find me on Facebook at Clint Monroe 2017 at gmail.com. Just been picking up cameras recently, getting that started, wrote a script since the beginning of this year. And because of this whole thing, done some script editing as well. And just living every day as I can. Getting started with a website here soon. So lots of things are happening and I can't be more excited. And stop by next week because it's going to be awesome. Promise. That's a pinky swear right there, dude.
All right. Well, I don't know if anybody's watching these in order, but next week we're going to try and have a screenplay competition and people can submit their log lines and maybe a page from the screenplay, and whoever gets the most likes, those will be the final ones, and then we'll vote on those, on which one to read. And so, again, it'll be another cold read because we're going to just have a winner and we're going to read that script and we'll see how it is. We'll limit the pages, like no more than 120 pages, because we know this already takes us like 3 hours. So
how do we audition for something like that?
Well, kind of like this one. We didn't know this one was going to be this week because this was a last minute change. So you just say that you're available during that time and you're interested in reading for the contest winner. And so we'll pick the last day and then we'll have to just cast it that last day. And
will it be at the same time?
Yes, same time.
Okay. All right. I'll talk to Angelina.
Okay, cool. And last but absolutely not least, yes. Tony Flora.
Haven't you guys heard enough of me already tonight?
Never.
Yeah. So thanks so much for giving me this role of the action/description reader again. I do like it. I am, let's see. You know what? I never say the irrelevant stuff, but I'm going to say it now anyways, just because I feel like it. I am an attorney for a small tribe in rural Arizona. And I love acting. They have nothing to do with each other because all I do all day long is review contracts and work with my clients. So this is an outlet for me. I'm also a realtor in Las Vegas, but that's another story for another time. I'm also getting into voiceover acting. And I have a series coming up where we just started filming 2 weeks ago. So that's been a blast. So Tony Flora on Facebook, just as it's spelled on the screen. And I mostly post about acting things. So the Table Tuesdays is a regular on my page. Occasionally a cat. I've been meaning to post my cat eating spinach. So that's about as riveting as I get.
Sick, though.
Awesome. That's amazing. As I'm sure you're finding out, like, I think there's many, many stories of people that had different careers first, and then they go from that into acting or filmmaking, and all of those experiences and knowledge like helps them or whatever.
Or they just do everything at once.
Or no, who was it? You could reverse Ronald Reagan this, man.
Or Jacob, they're like me and they pretty much do everything at once and they don't care how crazy it makes them look.
Yes, passionate. We're using the word passionate here.
Yes, creative passions.
But okay, I thank you all for bringing your creativity, your passion, your time, for reading this amazing film.
I don't think Vicky, did you say?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, well then
but thank you. We don't want to forget anyone. So appreciate that.
On my screen, she's the last one. So I was like, no, Vicky.
On my Brady Bunch screen, she's right in the middle.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You know what we should do?
Bunch.
We should read a script from the Brady Bunch.
Next year.
Yeah. Right now, that's a good idea. Right now we have the year planned out and it's mainly just movies. But then next year, the plan is to get into some more TV scripts.
No, but there's movies of the Brady Bunch. Jacob.
Oh, that's true. I that slipped my mind. Thank you. So we'll see. All right. Thank you all for everything. And
thank you for all you do for us.
Well, I couldn't do this then, especially this week from Angelina and Clint. Man, they pulled it all together, brought in more people, got the word out. Yeah, and everybody being here. We can't do it without any of you.
Hey,
So,
make sure if you're watching this, submit your scripts for the contest, man. It's exposure.
like, subscribe, follow us.
Like, subscribe, follow us, man.
Come be a part of this. You guys can act and read a role, or you can get better at like learning how professional scripts are made. All right.
Hey, this is certainly an educational experience worth looking into. So don't be afraid of trying. You'll never learn or know anything unless you try.
Agreed.
Thank you.
All right.
Our
We'll keep
newest
trying.
as well.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Only you can
Yes,
prevent
yeah.
forest fires.
All right. Goodbye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Say goodbye in here.
All right. I already pushed the off live thing.
See you guys.
Goodbye.
see ya.
Bye, guys.
Hey, Angelina.
Yeah.
Like Deanna already whipped, but I'll let you guys not a little whatever. But I met Tim Burton once. I
Oh,
was-
no way.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised.
I was working at this place called Image Metrics where we do like face animation stuff for a video game. And I'm the only one working there late at night once, everybody's gone. And then the owner of the company comes in and says, "Hey, Jacob, this is Tim." And and at first it didn't register for me at first. And then I'm like turn back. I'll show him what you're doing. And it didn't have the most impressive thing on the screen at the moment, which I feel bad about. But like, and he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And they went. But yeah, that was that.
They gave you like 10 minutes to change it around.
Well, I feel bad for the company, for the studio. It's not like an awesome, impressive thing for him to say, "Yes, we're going to use this company to do what I need to for my next film," whatever reason they were talking for. But yeah,
That's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
that's all. One little
Thank you so
tidbit.
much for all that you do.
Oh, no, and again, I couldn't do it without everybody helping out involved.
And I do
Honest,
have to
not being humble.
I have to especially thank Angelina for checking in on me to make sure I got the email.
Perfect. And Heather, we see every time you submit, you do an additional reading. We don't want extra work on you. Like, you've been here enough. We
It's
see
fun.
what
It's
you can
fun.
do.
I like
Oh,
learning about
Then
it.
do it.
you are happy to do it.
I
know what I mean?
actually, I'm in a playwright. I got commissioned for a no pay play with a theater company in the States. So this is good practice.
Nice. Good
Cool.
job.
Definitely.
Playing 3 different
job.
roles in said play. So this is really good practice.
Nice.
Oh, nice. That's
Yeah.
really cool, Jacob.